Chapter 7, 75. Suddenly, the phoenix Luan reared its head back and cried out into the heavens. The black flames that wrapped around its body rose over 10 times over. The pitch-black tribulation clouds in the sky seemed to be stimulated by something. They expanded at an astonishing speed, instantly covering the entire Marshall Field. The tribulation thunder increased in number and fell even faster. And most importantly, the tribulation clouds clearly regarded the dark star ice serpent as part of its tribulation. Massive amounts of tribulation thunder instantly covered it. Roar! With a deep roar, the silver horn on the dark star ice serpent's head began to shine with light. A layer of ice rapidly condensed from nothingness. Its entire body was pitch black, nearly the same color as the tribulation clouds. Countless tribulation, thunder, smashed into the black ice. It was like a black hole, easily swallowing up all of the tribulation thunder. As long as it struck the ice, it would instantly vanish from sight. Black flames raged and burned. Even the brilliant lightning was unable to completely cover it. It pierced through the blockade of tribulation thunder and appeared in front of everyone's eyes. But as these flames burned, they didn't emit the least bit of heat. Instead, they emitted an icy chill that penetrated deep into the soul. This sort of chill was different from the dark star ice serpent's strength. It directly affected the soul and consciousness, causing one's thoughts to become incomparably slow. A manifestation of strength that targets the consciousness. A beautiful elder of Radiance Temple shouted out. She looked towards North Cheong, a complex look in her eyes. Thinking about it, the temple master must have already known that the phoenix Luan could erupt with such strength. Thus, she was so confident and persistent. If the phoenix Luan could really win and seize the position of champion for Radiance Temple, then her prestige within the sect would reach an unprecedented peak. No one would be able to shake the temple master's position again. Thinking about their previous attitude, the eyes of the elders flashed. They began to consider just what sort of price they would have to pay in exchange for the temple master's forgiveness. The reason why the Radiance Temple elders would have such a great change in mood was simple. A manifestation of strength that targeted the consciousness was a formidable ability that only a formidable existence that had truly touched upon the divine Tao could possess. The black flames around the phoenix, Luan, were far from being able to freeze the soul with a single thought of the divine Tao. Even though it was far from being able to imprison all strength, it was still extremely terrifying. As for the dark star ice serpent, although it had displayed a formidable strength before, when compared to the eruption of the phoenix Luan, it had become overshadowed. Rumble, a seemingly endless amount of tribulation, lightning, descended in a frenzy. During this process, the phoenix Luan's aura became stronger and stronger. Finally, when its aura reached its peak, as it fiercely flapped its wings, a black gale suddenly appeared. It spiraled around like a black stone pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. It brazenly charged into the tribulation cloud, directly mincing and dispersing it. The heavenly tribulation had been dispersed. This was another scene that could only appear in legends. While everyone was sucking in a breath of cold air or exclaiming in shock, the raging lightning quickly dissipated under the burning of the black flames. Feng Wan's current appearance appeared in front of everyone, even though a large number of feathers on its body had been burned to ashes, revealing a bloody mess of flesh and even pale white bones. At this moment, under the phoenix Luan's aura that was so powerful that it caused one's heart to palpitate, no one thought that it was in a sorry state at all. There was only endless majesty and disdain. It was like an undead monarch that had broken free from its shackles and emerged from the depths of hell. If it weren't for the fact that the phoenix Luan's eyes were clear and there weren't any signs of it going berserk, most of the cultivators inside and outside the arena would have already fled in panic. At the same time, the dark star ice serpent that was hiding beneath the black ice also revealed itself. Compared to the phoenix Luan that directly faced the tribulation lightning and dispersed the heavenly tribulation, the dark star ice serpent's actions inevitably gave off a feeling of cowardice and fear. At this moment, even the hidden fog sect cultivators' confidence in the dark star ice serpent began to waver. All of them revealed worried expressions. For countless years, the 7 great sects had dominated the eastern plains. The Beast King battles of Dragon City's arena had been held countless times. But there had never been a time when the level of brilliance and the strength of the participating spirit beasts could compare with this Beast King battle. Why did the Hidden Fog sect finally manage to produce a dark star ice serpent? So why did Radiance Temple have such a strong phoenix lawn? This was the resentment in the hearts of all the Hidden Fog sect cultivators. Fu gasped for breath. His withered chest heaved up and down like broken bellows. He rubbed his cloudy eyes and nervously looked at the black-robed figure in front of him. Qin didn't turn his head, so Fu couldn't see his expression. But his motionless body and his straight back made him seem like a towering mountain that could lift up a mountain. He made one feel at ease and trust in him. Fu relaxed. As long as Mr. could stabilize himself, there was still a chance. The dark star ice serpent was personally raised by him, and he had even pulled it back from the brink of death twice. He was well aware of its strength. Don't worry. The dark star ice serpent will definitely win. We will not lose. The old and hoarse voice was filled with firmness. Everyone looked at Fu and then at Qin. Unconsciously, most of the panic in their hearts dissipated and they calmed down. That's right. Even if Radiance Temple's Phoenix Lawn was fierce, they still had Mr. After experiencing all sorts of accidents, the Hidden Fog sect cultivators were like Yun Dai. They had a nearly blind confidence in Qin. On the platform, the changing complexions of the Hidden Fog sect cultivators couldn't escape the eyes of the surrounding cultivators. All of them revealed looks of surprise. Just who was this mysterious black-robed man that the Hidden Fog sect cultivators trusted him so much? Even in this situation, he was able to calm the hearts of the people. Did he have some hidden card in his hand? However, the finals of the Beast King battle had already begun. Before the victor was decided, the Beast Fighting Coliseum's power isolated the outside world. Even if he had any tricks up his sleeve, he would not be able to use them. Kacha! Kacha! Cracks rapidly appeared on the surface of the dark star ice serpent's black ice. Then, pieces of ice fell to the ground. As they collided with the stone floor, they emitted a clear sound, as if gold and jade were striking each other. It coiled up its body and raised its head high. Its huge eyes stared at the phoenix lawn that was flying in the sky with an icy coldness. Before the finals began, the dark star ice serpent believed that with its strength it could easily seize the position of champion. It never imagined that it would fall into such a distressed situation. This caused the dark star ice serpent's original plan to put on a good performance, so that Mr. Lin would look favorably upon it to fall through. It was enraged to the extreme. Roar! It roared and opened its mouth. A ball of white air formed in its mouth and spat it forward. Hum! Hum! The black ice fragments on the ground trembled and buzzed as the ball of air formed. At this time, they flew up, exploding with the dark star. The air was frozen by the absolute low temperature. Visible white marks appeared in the air. The black ice fragments held along these white marks, as if they were blocks of ice rapidly flowing through a white river. At this time, all the cultivators who were watching this felt their hearts tremble. In that instant, it was like the stars had shifted. It was like they were standing next to a giant ice river, roaring through the void. Because of the fierce impact, the river water had turned deathly white, causing the black ice blocks floating on its surface to become even more striking. The white river was like a dragon, and the black ice was like armor. At this time, as the river rose up, the water scattered in all directions, turning into the head of a giant dragon. It opened its mouth, and one could clearly see the sharp fangs within as it ruthlessly bit forwards. Ah! Countless cultivators cried out in alarm. They staggered backwards. Then sweat poured down their bodies, soaking their backs. Just now, they had felt that the ice river that had transformed into a giant ice dragon was coming straight at them. A terrifying aura pierced straight into their hearts. Its terrifying might cause their souls to tremble, making it impossible for them to even think of resisting. They could only stretch out their necks and wait for death. As they cried out in alarm, everyone woke up. The ice river and the giant dragon in front of them had all vanished. It was only then that they realized they had fallen into an illusion due to the pull of strength. No, to be more accurate, this wasn't an illusion, but the true meaning of the Dark Star Ice Serpent's attack. Although it seemed like an ordinary breath attack, the truth was that it contained the strength of an ice river that could transform into a giant dragon. Everyone's faces flushed red, but before their embarrassment could disperse, they were interrupted by what happened next. They opened their mouths and felt shock in their hearts. When the ice river attack arrived, the Phoenix wand could clearly feel the terrifying strength contained beneath its common-looking appearance. A dignified light flashed in the depths of its incomparably calm, blood-red eyes. The Phoenix wand spread its wings and black flames rose up. It slammed down, causing a heaven-shaking explosion. The black tornado that had scattered heavenly tribulation appeared once more. Everyone that had just escaped from the true meaning of strength was shaken as they were dragged back in. In the void, in front of the giant dragon formed from the boundless ice river, there was an incomparably massive black stone staff. Its surface was extremely rough, and it was wrapped in black flames. At this time, the stone staff rose up and smashed down with the momentum of a thunderbolt. The ice river dragon flew forwards, the horns on its head shining with a cold light. Bang! The flaming black stone staff collided with the ice river dragon. Terrifying fluctuations of strength erupted, sweeping out in all directions like a hurricane, forming shockwaves visible to the naked eye. The shockwaves continued without end, like raging waves. And at the center of the collision, the black stone staff and the ice river dragon simultaneously disintegrated. As they disintegrated, a terrifying strength erupted once more, causing the already astonishing energy shockwaves to instantly increase by 10 times, 100 times. This feeling was like a monstrous tsunami that blotted out the skies, crashing down with a loud rumble. As for the cultivators that witnessed this collision, they felt as if they were standing beneath a tsunami. Bang! With a loud explosion, the Dark Star Ice Serpent was forced backwards. Its sharp claws pierced into the ground, leaving behind deep claw marks. Across from it, the Lawn Phoenix also flew backwards. The black flames around its body paused for a moment before igniting once more. Puff! Puff! Within the arena, amongst the cultivators from Radiance Temple, Moonkeep Tower, and Hidden Fog Sect, as well as the many spectating cultivators, those with weaker cultivations or weaker wills directly fell unconscious to the ground. Blood seeped out from their orifices. As for those that remained standing, besides a few with deep cultivations, most of them paled, fear in their eyes. In that strike, just now, the two true meanings of annihilation had shaken their minds. If they couldn't overcome the fear in their hearts, it would leave behind an indelible shadow in their hearts that would affect their future cultivation. And all of this had occurred under the premise that the arena had isolated the majority of the strength of the two spirit beasts. If they were to fight without reservation, then the number of people inside and outside the arena that would be able to protect themselves could be counted on 2 hands. As everyone thought of this, they couldn't help but reveal looks of horror and alarm. Since the start of the Beast King War countless years ago, this was the first time that the spectating cultivators had been injured on such a large scale. Chapter 776. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. This Phoenix Luan's strength wasn't normal. It was overdrawing its own life force. This should be related to the Dark Parliament. Had they prepared for both scenarios? As he thought about how he had almost been swallowed and replaced by the shadow, a cold light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. He turned and ordered those with insufficient cultivation immediately leave the arena. Qin Yu had never underestimated the Dark Parliament's strength. Since they had chosen to use Radiance Temple's Phoenix Lawn as a chess piece to stop the Hidden Fog sect from winning, they must have a certain degree of confidence in themselves. The Dark Star Ice Serpent still had strength left over, and the Phoenix Lawn should also be holding back. At this level of battle, it was far from reaching its peak. If they didn't leave now, they feared they would be dragged out of the arena. Hu Fu didn't doubt Qin Yu's judgment at all. He said, "Those with a cultivation below a tribulation immortal immediately leave." Everyone had seen what happened just now with their own eyes, so they didn't refuse this order at all. The group respectfully bowed and quickly left with the unconscious cultivators of their sections. Radiance Temple and Moonkeep Tower also ordered the weaker cultivators of their sects to leave at nearly the same time. The actions of the three sects frightened many of the spectating cultivators. After a brief moment of hesitation, they all stood up and left. Soon, the entire arena was empty. Now, the only ones left were the masters of the three sects and the cultivators that believed they could resist this attack. Qin Yu swept his eyes over them. Many of these people had their hearts set on a fluke. He feared they would suffer a bit later, so he naturally wouldn't warn them. And at this time, a new change occurred on the arena. After blocking the Dark Star Ice Serpent's attack, the Phoenix Lawn chose to take the initiative to attack. With a loud cry, its wings rapidly flapped and a black tornado appeared. It rumbled as it spun, connecting the heavens and earth. Although its aura was astonishing, this was the third time the Phoenix Lawn had used this move. Many cultivators frowned. Over and over again, this Phoenix Lawn of Radiance Temple shouldn't only have this method, right? The Dark Star Ice Serpent had already seen this attack twice and was likely prepared for it. Attacking like this was meaningless, but at this time another change occurred. In the space next to the black wind pillar, another wind pillar appeared. The rumbling sound suddenly rose. However, this was not the end. It was just the beginning. Wind pillars appeared one after another, and in the blink of an eye, there were 9 of them. Every single one of them was connected to the heavens and the earth, and had the power to mince the heavenly tribulation. The tribulation clouds were in a state where they were about to dissipate after expending most of their energy to send down the tribulation lightning, and perish together with the glacier colossal dragon. Now that the 9 of them were gathered together, the superposition and amplification of their power was not the sum of the 9 wind pillars, but a multiplicative one. At this moment, inside and outside the Colosseum, and even the entire Dragon City, there was only the roaring of the 9 wind pillars. There was no other sound. Everyone raised their heads and looked at Feng Yuan, who was wrapped in black flames, floating in the air between the 9 wind pillars. Fear appeared in their eyes, and all the guesses and suspicions they had before completely disappeared. Even if Feng Yuan really only knew how to summon wind pillars, at this level, it already had the power to crush everything. So what if you can change into 1,000 different forms? In the cultivation world, absolute power was the only standard to determine the strong and the weak. The black flames on Feng Yuan's body burned more and more fiercely. The blood-red color in its eyes became even richer, as if it would flow out at any moment. It turned its head and looked at where Radiance Temple was. A gentle light flashed in its blood-red eyes before turning into determination. Bei Qiong was expressionless, as if she hadn't felt the gaze that fell on her face just now. Her aura didn't change at all. Since she had chosen to insist on her own opinion and forcefully suppress the opposition of the elders, she was already prepared to sacrifice Feng Yuan. Although being liked by a monster beast could set off her beauty, the truth was that Bei Qiong didn't like it in her heart. But in order to control Feng Yuan, she had disguised herself well all these years. But just because her acting skills were good didn't mean that she wouldn't feel tired and annoyed. Thus, she could take advantage of this opportunity to completely rid herself of Feng Yuan's entanglement and consolidate her position in Radiance Temple. This was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, it wasn't time for the curtain to fall yet. there was still one last scene that needed to be played out. As Feng Wan was about to look away, Beiqiong's lips moved. Her hands within her sleeves trembled imperceptibly. But Feng Wan saw this, so it let out a cry filled with joy and excitement. It seemed as if this certain death situation wasn't anything at all. Turning to look at the dark star ice serpent, Feng Wan closed its eyes. Black flames crazily rose up all over its body, completely submerging it. In truth, I know that you don't like me and that you have been perfunctory all these years. But that doesn't change the fact that I like your heart. I have tried for a long time to obtain your approval, but in the end I have gained nothing. Instead, I have become even more disgusted. So, since you want to get rid of me, then I will fulfill your wish. This will also be the last time I will help you so that you can live comfortably in the future. But I still hope that my death today will leave behind the tiniest trace in your heart. If so, then I will be satisfied. 9 columns of wind swallowed Feng Wan as the black flames rose up. With loud rumbling sounds, they began to move. The stones on the ground were easily plowed away, leaving behind incomparably large ravines in the arena. As they approached each other, the rapidly spinning black winds didn't collide with each other. Instead, they seemed to fuse together. As this fusion appeared, the skies above Dragon City, everywhere one could see, everything turned blood red. It was deep and bright, as if 1 trillion lives had just been slaughtered, their blood had been sucked out, and then poured down to dye the skies red. A deep roar sounded out in everyone's hearts. It was impossible to describe just what sort of sound this was. It seemed to contain all the chaos, destruction, and slaughter in the world. Then, in the blood-red skies, the face of a giant rose up, as if it were overlooking the world. The moment everyone saw this face, their minds shook. Then they fell into panic and fear, as if they were on the edge of death and would be torn to pieces in the next moment. In the arena, a look of pleasant surprise flashed in the eyes of the puppet cultivator of the Dark Parliament, who was watching the battle. He never thought that the abyss bloodline flowing in this phoenix, Luan's body, would be even more powerful than he had imagined. It had actually summoned such a shocking existence. He had won. Even if this was only a projection, even if it only had the strength to casually strike out, even if its strength would be weakened 100 times over after crossing worlds, it would still be easy to kill the Dark Star Ice Serpent. The only pity was that after this summoning, the Feng Wan's life would come to an end. If he knew that it had such a formidable bloodline, he would have made more preparations and at least left it alive. The Dark Parliament had always been interested in this sort of life form with such a formidable bloodline, but now it was already too late. The puppet cultivator secretly sighed with regret. But as he thought about how the Dark Parliament would be able to obtain the Chaotic Sky Chronicle after today, his mood brightened. As for the previous assassination attempt, yes, it was indeed done by the Dark Parliament, but where was the evidence? Even if Ning Qin insisted on the Dark Parliament, as long as he couldn't produce any evidence, he would have to hand over that female disciple after he failed. No one could renege on a deal with the Dark Parliament, no matter who it was. Of this he was confident. On the hidden fog sex platform, Qin Yu frowned. He originally thought that he had placed enough importance on the Dark Parliament, but he never imagined that they would give him such a great surprise. If this was the case, then why would they take the unnecessary step of secretly plotting against him? Then there was only one explanation. The current change was something that the Dark Parliament never expected. Was this an unplanned surprise? Qin Yu bitterly smiled. Although the Dark Parliament had flipped the table, that didn't mean that the result of the Beast King War wasn't important. Only by obtaining victory could they take the initiative and force the Dark Parliament to give up. If they failed, Qin Yu could guarantee that with the Dark Parliament style, they would never admit to the assassination attempt. But in this current situation, it was nearly impossible for them to obtain victory. That blood-red face in the skies. Although Qin Yu didn't know its origins, he could clearly feel the terrifying strength it possessed. After being raised by him, the dark star ice serpent had undergone a complete rebirth. Its strength far surpassed the strongest ancestor recorded in the Hidden Fog Sect's records. But even so, facing that blood-red face, Qin Yu couldn't find any chance of victory. It could be said that this was a hopeless situation. But to be more precise, from Qin Yu's point of view, this was a situation that couldn't be resolved. In other words, there was someone who could resolve this, for instance, the one who had constructed Dragon City and this arena. Sometimes, taking the initiative to ask for help from others was an effective method to repair relations and ease the atmosphere. Moreover, Qin Yu believed that if he asked for help now, the ancient absolutely wouldn't refuse. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu closed his eyes beneath the black robes and sent out his request. Soon the ancient replied. He really did have a way. Hu Fu's body trembled. Despair filled his turbid eyes. Could it be that the heavens had decided that the Hidden Fog Sect would be destroyed? In such a situation, facing such a terrifying blood-red face, no matter how much confidence he had in Qin Yu, it still collapsed. This was because this was a strength that surpassed the limits of his imagination. Mr. Qin was fierce, but he was only a single person, not an omnipotent divine god. The atmosphere was stifling. All of the Hidden Fog Sect cultivators fell into a deep unwillingness and helplessness. They were so close to becoming the leader, so close that they were only a step away. But this step was a moat that they would never be able to cross. At this time, Qin Yu suddenly stood up from the highest stone chair in the front. He spread out his arms as if he were embracing the entire arena. Hu Fu and the others from the Hidden Fog Sect subconsciously widened their eyes. They were like drowning people who had grasped onto their last hope. Bei Qiong took a deep breath and suppressed the annoyance in her heart. If she knew that the Phoenix Luan bloodline was so powerful, then perhaps, but there were no maybes in this world. With things having come this far, there was no turning back. She looked at Qin Yu and sneered inwardly. At this time, he still didn't despair and give up. His temperament was quite tenacious, but this was useless. Today's outcome was already decided. The Moonkeep Tower Master turned her gaze from the blood-red face and then looked back at the Hidden Fog Sect's platform. That look of pity and ridicule appeared once more. A bunch of lowly ants actually tried to change their destiny. They were doomed to fail. Chapter 777. Closing his eyes, Qin Yu focused his mind into a single point. With his highly concentrated mental strength, his senses became incomparably sharp. According to the method that the ancient told him, the strength hidden deep within the arena was like a reef hidden beneath the sea, slowly rising to the surface. Roar! A loud roar spread into Qin Yu's mind. His field of vision changed. Buried deep underground, in a towering underground palace, a simple blue altar emitted a faint halo of light. Countless runes flowed on its surface and then spread out in all directions, covering every inch of the underground palace. The function of these runes was to isolate and imprison. Their target was the slumbering, great dragon atop the altar. Its body was so massive that even though it was coiled up, it still occupied the entire altar. At first glance, all that could be seen were black scales like protruding rocks. At this time, the great dragon's eyes opened. With loud, cracking sounds, the dragon's scales rubbed against each other. It stretched out its body and raised its massive head. Its deep blue eyes were like a boundless sea. As it stared at Qin Yu, it seemed as if it wanted to completely submerge him. If it weren't for the fact that the ancient had already told him about this great dragon's background, Qin Yu wouldn't have been able to see that it was only a powerful dragon soul. It simply didn't have its own body. In order to condense a body that was completely the same as reality, this great dragon's soul strength had surpassed the limits of Qin Yu's understanding. As the great dragon's eyes locked onto him, Qin Yu felt as if he were carrying a mountain on his back. He felt as if he would explode from the pressure, and he couldn't move at all. Without daring to delay, he immediately released the aura of the ancient in his body. The great dragon atop the altar revealed a trace of excitement. For countless years, my long slumber nearly caused me to lose all sense of time. But now, you have finally arrived, the clansman that my master determined would come. The great dragon's deep and low voice echoed through the underground palace, rumbling like thunderclaps. The suppression that Qin Yu withstood instantly faded away. He took a deep breath and said, "Now I need your help." The great dragon looked down at him. "Although your body is stained with my master's aura, in order for me to help you, I need my master's mark." Qin Yu lifted his hand and spread out his fingers. A dragon claw mark that had shrunk countless times appeared on his palm, shining with a faint halo. The dragon nodded. "This is the mark of my master. You have the power to temporarily open the altar. Tell me what you need to do." Beast Fighting Arena. Standing high above, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. He slowly lifted his arms, his speed slow, as if he were carrying 1,000 caddies of pressure. At this moment, his actions attracted everyone's attention. Countless cultivators revealed looks of surprise, but most of them sneered. The descent of the Crimson Face was a frightening power that originated from beyond this world. Based on everyone's guesses, it was highly likely that the Crimson Face belonged to a great lord or even a ruler from the abyss. An existence like this was capable of causing the heavens and the earth to collapse with a single thought and cause everything to fall into nirvana. Even if it was only a projection that descended, it was utterly impossible to resist. Only if the black-robed cultivator was a legendary super powerhouse who had truly stepped into the divine Tao or even condensed a godhead would he have a chance to change the outcome. But was this possible? It was obviously just wishful thinking. The puppet cultivator from the Dark Parliament felt his heart skip a beat and a dignified expression appeared on his face. He thought back to the several confrontations he had with Qin Yu before. Each time, Qin Yu had been able to refresh the Dark Parliament's impression of him. Qin Yu was like a mountain hidden in a thick fog. One would never be able to see just how high it was. Could he reverse the situation this time? No, that was absolutely impossible. Even if the 7 senators of the Dark Parliament joined together and released their greatest trump card, they would only be able to barely contend with this Crimson Face. If Qin Yu could do this alone, then his danger level would be raised to the highest without hesitation. There would only be one path left for the Dark Parliament to completely destroy him. Otherwise, such a terrifying and mysterious enemy would likely bring an unbearable disaster to the entire Dark Parliament in the future. I hope I'm just overthinking things. The puppet controlled by the sage muttered to itself. But it was clear that Qin Yu, who had obtained the help of the ancient, couldn't advance in the direction he wanted. As his arms rose higher and higher, the arena began to shake. Everyone became aware of this. They subconsciously widened their eyes as they looked at Qin Yu, their eyes filled with disbelief. The shaking became increasingly intense, as if there was an existence imprisoned deep underground that was about to break free from its shackles. But in truth, this wasn't an illusion, but reality. The dark star ice serpent anxiously roared. It could feel an aura coming from the depths of the arena that had locked onto it from afar. This suppression came from a higher order of life, making it wish it could turn around and flee. It looked up at Qin Yu. At this time, it instinctively sought help from the most powerful existence it could think of. Qin Yu nodded at it. The dark star ice serpent relaxed. Although there were still some worries that hadn't dissipated, they had already stabilized. Thinking for a moment, Qin Yu said, "Relax your mind and don't resist too much. Otherwise, I fear you will suffer a bit." The dragon soul didn't care about the dark star ice serpent. If it weren't for Qin Yu informing it ahead of time, then it could have directly seized its body. There would have been no need to go through so much trouble and divide its attention to protect the dark star ice serpent's weak soul. Because of the existence of the arena's strength, Qin Yu couldn't secretly send a sound transmission. Thus, everyone could clearly hear his words. But what did these words mean? Without giving anyone much time to think or be surprised, there was a loud explosion from beneath the arena, as if something had detonated. The entire arena violently shook. Kacha! Kacha! The incomparably hard stones of the arena began to crack apart. In the blink of an eye, countless cracks appeared in the ground, each one pitch black. Roar! With a dragon's roar, the phantom of a great dragon flew out from the cracks. The dragon, might of the dragon race, naturally spread out. Everyone felt their chests tighten and their faces paled. Great dragon! Countless cultivators cried out in alarm. It had to be known that in this world, besides a small number of ancient texts that had records of the dragon race, it was as if they had never appeared before. But now, a true great dragon had flown out from beneath Dragon City's arena. Even if it was only a soul form and didn't have a mortal body of its own, it was still a great dragon that existed in legends. There was no doubt about this. After roaring, the great dragon's soul form swept its eyes over the audience. Wherever it looked, everyone subconsciously lowered their heads. That deep blue dragon's eyes contained a formidable soul suppression, making it so that no one dared to look straight at it. Its eyes paused on Chinyu for a moment. In the next moment, the great dragon swooped down. Its target was the dark star ice serpent that was curled up into a ball and shivering on the ground. With its strength, it shouldn't have been so weak. But, coincidentally, the dark star ice serpents that the Hidden Fog sect raised had a faint dragon bloodline within them. This was also the reason why they had sharp claws growing out from their abdomens. As for the dragon's soul on the underground altar, it was more accurate to say that it was a man-made product. It was refined from the soul fragments of countless great dragons, and after a series of mutations, its soul level had reached a level comparable to that of the primogenitor of the dragon race. The dark star ice serpent withstood an absolute suppression on the soul level. For it to maintain its consciousness and not fall unconscious was already a testament to its firm will. Surprise flashed in the dragon soul's eyes. It never thought that a monster beast with an extremely thin dragon race bloodline would be able to maintain its consciousness beneath the pressure of its soul. It seemed that this monster beast wasn't completely useless. The dragon soul was a bit more satisfied with the dark star ice serpent and decided to give it some benefits. Although it couldn't be considered a descendant of the dragon race, if it became a bit stronger, it should be able to help its master with some minor matters. The dragon soul was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it arrived beside the dark star ice serpent. Without pausing, it fused into its body. The dark star ice serpent's giant body suddenly straightened. It raised its head high, pain in its eyes. In the next moment, the black scales covering its body began to break apart, revealing the damaged flesh and blood underneath. At the same time, within the dark star ice serpent's body, there was a loud crackling sound of bones and muscles breaking. The sounds of growth and growth erupted one after another. The dragon's soul was transforming its mortal body, bringing it closer to a dragon's body so that it could display its true strength. Roar, roar. The dark star ice serpent roared out in pain. Large amounts of blood sprinkled onto the ground, soon dyeing the ground red. Beneath the sharp claws, large claw marks appeared on the stone. During this process, the dark star ice serpent's body began to grow at a visible speed. The cracked flesh and blood rapidly regenerated and new scales grew out. During this transformation, the dragon soul was even more satisfied with the dark star ice serpent. This monster beast's mortal body quality was much better than it had imagined. It could save a great deal of strength. If so, then it might be able to give it a lucky chance. As the dragon soul's thoughts changed, the dark star ice serpent underwent a new transformation. The flesh and blood on its head rapidly bulged out. The dark star ice serpent's pain seemed to increase by several times. Its massive body tumbled about on the ground, but its eyes were filled with endless joy. After the initial panic, the dark star ice serpent sensed that its mortal body was rapidly becoming stronger. And now, what the dragon soul was doing was directly increasing the level of its bloodline. Once it grew a second horn, it would become the incarnation of a flood dragon and become a close relative of the dragon race. It would even be able to cultivate and strengthen its dragon race bloodline until it finally transformed into a true great dragon. But this sort of bloodline increase, especially when the dragon soul used such a crude and direct method, the pain was directly proportional to the harvests. Even though it knew that this was a good thing, the dark star ice serpent nearly collapsed and retreated several times. Just as it felt that it could no longer withstand it, the heart-rending pain receded like a tide. The dragon soul's voice sounded out, "Little fellow, leave everything else to me." In the next moment, it took control of its mortal body. Schwa! Its eyes opened, rapidly turning a deep blue. At the same time, the aura that the dark star ice serpent emitted began to rise at a terrifying speed. In an instant, it crossed several levels. The surrounding space constantly cracked apart, countless tiny cracks appearing and dissipating before reappearing. This was because space itself could no longer withstand the fluctuations of its strength. And this was because the dark star ice serpent was in a calm state. If it attacked with all its strength, it feared a single strike could cause the heavens and earth to collapse. The dark star ice serpent looked up, its deep blue eyes locking onto the skies. The giant blood-red face that was looking down at it seemed to feel a threat. Its tightly shut eyes trembled and then slowly opened. Chapter 778. Its giant tail slammed down. The dark star ice serpent was like an arrow released from a bow, soaring into the heavens as it hurtled towards the blood-red face, its momentum like a rainbow. The imprisonment of the arena was easily broken apart. As the dark star ice serpent soared into the skies, the trillions of spiritual strength in the world began to boil. Like rivers returning to the sea, they gathered from all directions, crazily revolving around it. The phantom of a great dragon appeared around the dark star ice serpent, wrapping around it like a suit of armor. The blood-red face stared at the dark star ice serpent. Its mouth suddenly moved, emitting two strange syllables. Although no one could understand what it was, they instantly understood what it was saying. Dragon race. In the next moment, a heaven-shaking explosion erupted. The dark star ice serpent covered in dragon armor shot into the skies, colliding with the blood-red face. In an instant, the impact of the energy caused the sky to shatter like a fragile mirror. Everything that could be seen was pitch-black darkness. It seemed to be empty, but it was filled with destructive energy that was enough to crush any living being below the divine Tao into powder. Because they collided in the skies above Dragon City, powerful shockwaves suddenly descended. It was like a million mountains were crashing down, causing the entire foundation of Dragon City to cave in by several meters. Luckily, at this critical moment, a strength erupted from Dragon City, blocking the shockwaves outside. Otherwise, Dragon City would already be littered with corpses. But there was one place that wasn't within the scope of protection, and that was the arena. It seemed to be independent of Dragon City, as if it had been moved here after Dragon City was built, and wasn't a part of Dragon City at all. Thus, the cultivators that remained in the arena became the rare survivors of this impact. Like a strong wind sweeping through a field of wheat, those that fell to the ground howled in pain. But this was only a bit better. The most miserable ones were those cultivators that silently fell to the ground. Their bodies twitched involuntarily as blood wildly flowed out from their orifices. Those that had tried their luck weren't an exception. Their fates were particularly miserable. No, there was one person that hadn't fallen. Chinyu looked up, his eyes deep. The other party seemed to sense him. Their gazes met, and Chinyu instantly determined that this seemingly ordinary cultivator had another soul hidden beneath his pale face. A powerhouse from the Dark Parliament. As expected, they would not miss the finals of the Beast King battle. Sage sighed inwardly. But now that he had been exposed as a counselor of the Dark Parliament, he had his own pride and reservations. He bowed and greeted Qin Yu. Then his lips moved and his voice sounded out in Qin Yu's ears. Parliament Counselor Sage greets Mr. Ning Qin. With everything he had personally experienced today, Qin Yu had enough qualifications to earn his respect, even if he had already decided to kill Qin, no matter the cost. The Parliament would never allow an uncontrollable source of danger to appear. Qin Yu nodded, not saying anything. He looked up into the skies, where the tumbling sea of blood blocked out all vision. The result was about to be revealed. He wasn't too worried. With the ancient status, since he was taking action, he definitely had absolute confidence in himself. Moreover, the blood-colored face had crossed over and did not have the home advantage, so it was only natural that it would fail. And indeed, not long after these thoughts raced through his mind, the thick blood-red color in his field of vision began to rapidly fade away like a falling tide. The dark star ice serpent's figure appeared. The great dragon armor covering its body was now broken and tattered, revealing its scarred body. But its aura was still formidable. It howled through the skies, roaring without end, recklessly venting its strength. The blood-colored face that crossed over vanished from sight. The outcome had been decided. At Radiance Temple, North Cheong's face instantly paled, without the least bit of blood left in her. The Moonkeep Tower Master stood up. Her eyebrows were tightly furrowed and her eyes were icy cold. The Phoenix, Luan, had been defeated. It had actually been defeated. Things had begun to spiral out of control. As North Cheong was lost in a daze, lost in the future, the Moonkeep Tower Master had already regained her composure. She took a deep breath and her eyes turned icy cold. Since an accident had occurred, she could only use her last resort. Before Hu Fu could speak, she would send him to the Yellow Springs. Within the sleeve of the robe, 5 fair and slender fingers spread open. The space quietly split open, and a pitch-black jade tablet flew out from within. The Moonkeep Tower Master grasped it in her hand and crushed it without hesitation. With a light cracking sound, the jade card shattered into countless pieces. On the hidden fog sex platform, Hu Fu's eyes widened. He spat out a mouthful of black blood that began to corrode the ground. A thick curse aura rapidly filled the air. Just looking at this pool of black blood would cause one's soul to tremble. Protect the sect master. Several hidden fog sect elders were panic-stricken. Because of the Dark Star Ice Serpent's victory, the ecstatic smiles on their faces didn't even have time to spread before they froze. Because they didn't know the specific attribute of the curse, they didn't dare to touch Hu Fu's body. They could only closely circle around him, their eyes sweeping around like hawks as they tried to find the murderer that had plotted against Hu Fu. Beneath the black robes, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He swept his eyes over the expressionless Moonkeep Tower Master. Because he had fused with the arena's aura, he was able to sense something. As he thought, Hu Fu didn't hesitate to sacrifice his life in order to become the champion of this Beast King War. There was a hidden story behind this, and the other party involved was Moonkeep Tower. The Dark Star Ice Serpent had won, and the Moonkeep Tower Master hadn't hesitated to take Hu Fu's life. It seemed that things weren't as simple as they seemed. However, although this woman was ruthless and decisive, Hu Fu had made preparations ahead of time. Perhaps things wouldn't go as she wished. He violently coughed and spat out a massive amount of black blood. Hu Fu waved his hand, stopping the disciples from helping him up. The curse on his body was not only inherited, but it also had a formidable ability to spread. Once it touched the blood that was corroded by the curse, it would infect him. His field of vision darkened. Hu Fu clenched his teeth, clinging onto the last shred of clarity he had left. He had already reached the end, and he could not fall here. The hopes and hopes of the past sect masters and countless seniors would be fulfilled in his hands today. Who He violently gasped for breath. His nose and mouth seemed to burn, and a tearing pain spread out from his chest. But Hu Fu smiled. Indeed, the preparations of the previous generations had been useful. He had barely managed to survive. Although he would soon die, it was enough for him to complete what was to come. The weak and powerless heart in his chest suddenly began to beat with vigor. A trace of red appeared on Hu Fu's pale face. Then he rapidly became younger. In just several breaths of time, he had restored his original appearance. His back was straight and his eyes were bright and full of expression. But the decaying aura around Hu Fu's body didn't weaken at all. Rather, it became even thicker. He was like a freshly unearthed corpse that had been buried deep underground for countless years. Although he maintained a fresh and vibrant appearance, the insides had long since rotted away. "Sect Master, your aura." An elder had a shocked expression. Hu Fu smiled. "My condition is very good, unprecedentedly good today. I will break the cursed shackles that have imprisoned my hidden fog sect's bloodline for generations to come." He didn't speak further. He took 2 steps forwards and cupped his hands together, bowing deeply. "Mister, the hidden fog sect will remember your great graciousness for generations to come. As long as it is a cultivator of my hidden fog sect, we will all obey your orders in the future." Qin Yu turned and lightly said, "You don't have much time left. If you have any wishes, then hurry up and do them. Don't delay me." Hu Fu respectfully said, "Yes, thank you for your understanding, mister." But he sighed inwardly. He originally wanted to use this chance to draw a line between the hidden fog sect and mister. But it was clear that mister didn't want to be entangled with them too much. Luckily, with this matter at Dragon City, the hidden fog sect could still borrow their influence. If someone were to plot against them in the future, they would surely have to worry about it. High above the highest heavens, the dark star ice serpent howled as it flew back. The moment it fell to the ground, it fell into a deep slumber. The dragon soul's voice echoed in Qin Yu's ears. "I have completed what I promised you. Moreover, I left some strength in this little fellow's body. In the future, it might be able to serve my master." As its words fell, the dragon's soul dissipated. It was only an avatar to begin with. Its main body could gather and scatter with a thought. The dark star ice serpent's aura rapidly fell, but its breathing was steady and it hadn't suffered any fatal injuries. Moreover, with the experience of being possessed by the dragon's soul today in addition to the strength left behind by the dragon soul, it was sure to have great harvests once it awoke. The black flames that wrapped around the phoenix lawn vanished. Where it was originally located, there was nothing left. In order to summon a powerful existence from the abyss to cross over, the phoenix lawn had paid nearly everything. If it had one, it might have been able to live a little longer. But now that the blood-red face had been defeated and it had suffered a backlash, its soul and body had been incinerated into nothingness. One side was unconscious and one side was dead. The result of the battle had been decided. Rumble, rumble, the massive Dragon City arena was rapidly repaired. Then, the platform belonging to the Hidden Fog sect rapidly rose up until it reached the center of the arena. Countless cultivators looked towards it. This was the glory and respect that the champion should enjoy. At almost the same time, a golden light appeared in the air, covering all the Hidden Fog sect cultivators, as well as the supporters behind them. Even if they weren't in the arena, this golden light would still descend. This was a gift from Dragon City, a reward that all victors could obtain. Qin Yu could feel the golden light fusing into his body. There seemed to be some changes, but he couldn't pinpoint the specifics. It was just that his mind seemed a bit clearer and more transparent. And this was the true function of Dragon City's gift. It wouldn't directly increase a cultivator's cultivation, but would strengthen their perception so that their future cultivation speed would be faster. Of course, the golden light that Qin Yu obtained was different from everyone else's. For instance, the amount of golden light fusing into his body was at least dozens of times that of others. But in the midst of all the flashing golden light, no one discovered this. The champion position has been decided. The final victor of the arena battle. You may now put forth your requests. A deep and low voice echoed out from the arena. This was the key to today's battle between the 7 great sects of the Eastern Plains. With the arena's supervision, no one would dare to go back on their word. To a great extent, it could guarantee that the champion would obtain the greatest amount of rights. Hu Fu took a deep breath. He loudly said, "Great Spirit of the arena, the Hidden Fog sect is willing to give up all rights as the champion in exchange for your help." Whoosh, there was an uproar. The reason the 7 great sects desperately fought for the champion position was to obtain enough benefits. But now, the Hidden Fog sect had given up on all of this. Just what were they planning on doing? The Hidden Fog sect cultivators revealed looks of bewilderment and confusion. But Hu Fu's actions had won him enough respect. They maintained their silence, waiting for the sect master to give them an explanation. After a moment of silence, the voice from the arena sounded out once more. "Very well." Chapter 779. The crowd was in an uproar. Hu Fu's accusations revealed an unbelievable secret. The Hidden Fog sect, one of the 7 great sects of the Eastern Plains, was actually nothing more than a puppet controlled by others. And the one controlling the Hidden Fog sect was the mysterious and low-key Moonkeep Tower. Countless eyes looked at the expressionless face of the tower master of the Moonkeep Tower. Her face looked even more ordinary and unlikable. Their hearts were filled with suspicion. It was hard to imagine that this woman had such a terrifying secret technique. But since Hu Fu had spoken, and he had even given up his position as champion in exchange for the Colosseum's help, there was no doubt that this matter was real. The ones who were the most shocked and incredulous were the Hidden Fog sect cultivators. It was like they had been struck by a bolt of lightning. They all froze where they stood. They had always been proud of their incomparably powerful sect, but it was actually a puppet controlled by someone else? Then what were they? "Sect master, what's going on?" "My Hidden Fog sect has an inheritance that has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Our strength is unrivaled. How could we possibly be controlled by Moonkeep Tower?" "Sect master, please explain this matter clearly." The agitated elders' faces flushed red. Hu Fu had a solemn expression, a bit of bitterness in his eyes. He slowly said, "This curse has existed since the founding of the Hidden Fog sect and has been passed down through the sect. As long as someone cultivates an inherited cultivation method, they will become the medium of this curse. For hundreds of thousands of years, the successive sect masters have bitterly searched for a way to remove the curse. However, apart from paying with their lives, they have not obtained anything. According to the sect's ancient records, several former sect masters who suddenly died because of this. His eyes were filled with pain and determination. But our ancestors never gave up resisting. Generation after generation, they finally found a way to temporarily shield the power of the curse. But this method can only be used once. Once it fails and is discovered, the Hidden Fog sect will face a great calamity. Thus, we have been bitterly waiting all this time, waiting for a chance to act. My teacher's teacher, they all died while waiting. When it came to my sect's generation, I finally found a chance. Because the Hidden Fog sect has obtained Mister's help, after thinking it over and over again, I have decided to act. As for this, the Hidden Fog sect's sect master's bloodline experienced tens of thousands of years of struggle from over a dozen ancestors, and finally fulfilled their wish. Today, I, Hu Fu, the 17th sect master of the Hidden Fog sect, will break the shackles that bind the Hidden Fog sect and fight for true freedom for the Hidden Fog lineage. More than 100,000 years had passed, and 17 generations of sect leaders had fought for it. If they had not heard it with their own ears, they would never have believed it. But all of this came from Hu Fu's personal account, and it happened in today's situation, so there was no way he could be wrong. Moonkeep Tower. Moonkeep Tower. Who would have thought that the most low-key of the 7 great sects, the one with the least obvious influence, had actually controlled the Hidden Fog sect hundreds of thousands of years ago? Now that he knew this and carefully thought about it, he discovered that for countless years, the Hidden Fog sect had never come into conflict with Moonkeep Tower on their own initiative. Even if there were conflicts between them, they would always choose to take a step back for one reason or another. These coincidences had become the irrefutable evidence. A Hidden Fog sect elder cried out, "Sect Master, why didn't you tell us about this? Since there are flaws in the method of inheritance, we can just abandon it and not use it. Why should we let the 16 former sect masters bear such heavy pressure?" Hu Fu shook his head. "It's useless. Once we stop cultivating the method of inheritance, the hidden curse strength will erupt. At that time, the entire Hidden Fog sect will be destroyed. So even if we know that the method of inheritance is the source of the curse, we can only cultivate it generation after generation. But luckily, after today, this curse will be completely uprooted. The future juniors of our Hidden Fog sect will no longer be enslaved by others. Sect Master, we have let you down. We have offended Sect Master many times before. I ask that you forgive us. We were foolish." Hu Fu took a deep breath. It's all in the past. He looked at all the Hidden Fog sect cultivators and said in a low voice, "I hope that you will always remember today as the day the Hidden Fog sect was reborn. Moreover, you must remember that the reason the Hidden Fog sect was reborn is all because of Mister's help. Without Mister, we would still be struggling in slavery, and perhaps we would never have had the chance to escape their control." Hu Fu turned and bowed. Mister's great graciousness is something the Hidden Fog sect will never forget. In the future, as long as Mister commands us, we will go through fire and water without hesitation. Walala, all the Hidden Fog sect cultivators followed suit and bowed. We will never forget Mister's graciousness. Qin Yu shook his head inwardly. This fellow Hu Fu was clearly repaying his graciousness. But the truth was that he was doing everything he could to ensure the safety of the Hidden Fog sect. Well, since he had sacrificed his life for this, and the Hidden Fog sect had suffered so many hardships, Qin Yu wouldn't bother with him. Qin Yu nodded. "If there is a need in the future, I will naturally ask." Hu Fu was overjoyed. Endless gratitude filled his eyes. "Thank you, Mister." It seemed as if the Hidden Fog sect would have to shoulder a massive pressure from now on, but the truth was that with Mister's strength, how could he possibly need their help? But with these words, the Hidden Fog sect had a kinship with Mister. This was a powerful protective talisman. The voice in the arena continued to sound out. "Moonkeep Tower, are you willing to lift the curse of the Hidden Fog sect?" The Moonkeep Tower Master bowed. "I will follow your will." She lifted a hand. Light surged in her palm, and a black stone tablet appeared. On the surface of the tablet, countless tadpole-shaped runes wriggled about, emitting a dark halo of light. With just a glance, Hu Fu was able to determine that this stone tablet was the source of the curse hidden within the Hidden Fog sect's inherited cultivation method. This sort of heart-palpitating feeling, as if everything was under someone's control, he couldn't be wrong. Although he didn't dare to believe that Moonkeep Tower would give up so easily, the truth was right in front of him. Perhaps they feared the will of the arena. After all, the high-level figures of the 7 great sects were well aware of just how formidable it was. The Moonkeep Tower Master lifted a hand and slapped it. The black stone tablet shattered inch by inch, tumbling about as it dissipated into powder. All of the Hidden Fog sect cultivators felt their hearts relax, as if some invisible shackles had been unlocked within their bodies. It was only at this moment that everyone truly believed that the curse truly existed. As they thought about how they were puppets controlled by someone else and how their life and death were controlled by someone else, they broke out in a cold sweat. Panic filled their hearts, but also endless anger. All of them glared at Moonkeep Tower's platform. All of the hidden fog sect cultivators were sure that this was a great enemy that they wouldn't rest until one of them died. To be enslaved for tens of thousands of years, such a great enmity could only end when one side was completely annihilated. The Moonkeep Tower Master was expressionless. She lowered her head, hiding the coldness and ridicule in her eyes. How naive! How laughable! Did they really think they could rid themselves of the curse like this? It was just that after this incident, Moonkeep Tower would clearly be targeted. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, they could only change their appearance. This was a somewhat troublesome matter. As for the hostility from the Hidden Fog sect, there was no need to care about that group of people that were doomed to die in this world. Hu Fu was excited and his face flushed red. The shackles that imprisoned the Hidden Fog sect had finally been broken. Even if he died now, he would have no regrets. Teacher, the truth is that sect master Hu Fu wasn't bad at all, but his ending was too pitiful. After the dust settled, Yundai happily walked over. She softly said, a look of pity on her face. Beneath the black robes, Qinyu had a calm expression. Hu Fu had been benevolent and obtained benevolence. This was already a very good ending. As for feeling sorry for him, in this world, there were countless people more pitiful than Hu Fu. How could he care about all of them? In this world, it wasn't easy for a person to take care of themselves and those they cared about. What Qin Yu was thinking about now was how to deal with the Dark Parliament. If he could avoid conflict with them, that would be the best result. But now, it seemed that the difficulty was a bit high. At this time, the ancient's voice sounded out in his mind. This little girl is right. This Hu Fu is indeed pitiful. There was clearly a deeper meaning to these words. Qin Yu frowned. My lord, what do you mean? The curse has only been half lifted. As long as those fellows are willing, they can easily restore themselves. In the end, all of them will die. The ancient clearly knew the origin of the curse. With Moonkeep Tower status, it didn't have the qualifications to mention it. It seemed that there was an even more formidable influence behind them. Qin Yu frowned. He didn't have too many connections with the Hidden Fog sect, and he didn't have much of a favorable impression of their style of doing things. Now that the Beast King War had ended and the bet with the Dark Parliament had been completed, regardless of whether or not the agreement was valid, Qin Yu had no reason to wade into these muddy waters. After a moment of silence, he looked at Hu Fu. At this time, Hu Fu was smiling with incomparable happiness. His entire body exuded a relaxed and joyful feeling. But this time, Hu Fu's aura began to weaken. His youthful face rapidly paled. His time was about to come. Qin Yu originally thought that he could coldly watch from the sidelines, but the tumbling emotions in his chest were clearly protesting. He suddenly said, Yundai, do you think Hu Fu is pitiful? Yundai was startled. She subconsciously nodded, but then her face flushed red. Teacher, I don't have any other meaning. You don't need to care about me. It was all because of her teacher that she was able to live peacefully until now. She didn't have the qualifications to influence her teacher's judgment. Moreover, her teacher had already helped the Hidden Fog sect a great deal. Looking at Yundai's flustered appearance, Qin Yu shook his head. I don't want to meddle in other people's business, but some people have gone too far. Yundai was puzzled, but as she saw that her teacher seemed to be talking to himself and didn't seem to have any intention of continuing, she cleverly shut her mouth. My lord, I hope that you can help them. The ancient said, with your temperament, should I say that you have good intentions, or that you are too soft-hearted? If that was a test just now, then I would have judged you to have failed. Qin Yu said, I know, but in this world, there are some things that I have to manage. If I have caused trouble for my lord, then that is my fault. The ancient said, I can help you, but that can be considered as compensation to you once more. I hope that you can forget the unpleasantness from before. In the end, the only ancient left in this world are you and me. Chapter 780. Selectively forget everything he experienced in the shadow world. That was clearly impossible. Qin Yu had lied. He was well aware of this, and so was the ancient. But this wasn't important. What was important was that the relationship between the two sides had eased up. Only like this could they continue, smoothly. I will temporarily lend you a portion of my strength. As for what you want to do next, that is up to you. As the ancient's voice fell, a boundless ocean-like aura fused into Qin Yu's body. He could easily control the strength, and it wouldn't affect his mortal body. Indeed, with the level of the ancient's consciousness, he was able to accomplish many seemingly inconceivable things. But in the end, this wasn't Qin Yu's own strength, so he couldn't control it as he wished. When he moved, a terrifying aura broke out from his body. At this moment, it was like a giant had appeared. Its feet stepped on the earth, its head reaching into the heavens, its eyes overlooking the earth. All life was covered in the aura it emitted. The entire arena fell deathly silent. All the cultivators turned their heads to look at the source of this aura. They felt as if they were ants beneath the feet of this giant, about to be crushed at any moment. This was a strength that completely surpassed the limits of what they could withstand. It was even more terrifying than the blood-red face that crossed over from before. All they could see was space constantly collapsing and reforming. Their line of sight was split apart, causing everything to blur. A black-robed figure sat on a stone chair. He was like a god that had descended into the world, his endless majesty causing one to instinctively feel awe. Yun Dai's eyes widened. She didn't know what had happened for her teacher's aura to undergo such a heaven-shaking change. Or was this the true strength that her teacher had been hiding? Indeed, her teacher had always hidden his depths and was always able to give others pleasant surprises. Unless he wanted to, no one could truly see through his depths. Yun Dai's face flushed red. Such a powerful teacher was clearly the best thing to rely on. Perhaps she should think of a way to change her teacher's mind and have him accept the chaotic sky chronicle. Hu Fu had a nervous expression. Mr. You are... Great waves were already tumbling in his heart. Although he already knew that Mr. was mysterious and formidable, it was only now that he discovered that his previous thoughts were far too ridiculous. However, it was only now that he realized how laughable his previous thoughts were. Mr.'s true strength was actually this powerful, but now that everything had been resolved, why would Mr. do such a thing? Was it purely to show off his strength? No. Mr. would never do such a senseless thing. In the crowd, the face of the puppet controlled by the sage alternated between red and green, and its eyes revealed bitterness and helplessness. Just now, he had been thinking about how to keep Qin Yu here and had even come up with several plans. But looking at it now, everything he had done was simply a joke. With the aura that erupted from Qin Yu, even if the Parliament used their strongest trump card, they still wouldn't have absolute confidence they could kill him. Big trouble. Qin Yu looked down. He paused for a moment and slowly said, Hu Fu, do you think your wish has been fulfilled? Hu Fu's expression changed, but he still said truthfully, Mister, I am able to sense that the curse power in my body has indeed disappeared. Qin Yu lifted a finger. Then, Moonkeep Tower Master, if you answer this question, can you give me a different answer? The deep voice carried a powerful aura that could not be resisted, constantly rolling in the air. The Moonkeep Tower Master's complexion changed. When Qin Yu's aura erupted, she already had a foreboding premonition. She didn't want that to happen. How did he know? Her thoughts raced. The Moonkeep Tower Master took a deep breath. But before she could speak, Qin Yu interrupted her. I don't like it when others lie to me. So you only have one chance. If your answer does not satisfy me, then none of you can leave. Don't leave. This was not an invitation to stay as a guest. The Moonkeep Tower Master stiffened. She was locked onto by Chinyu's aura, and a cold sweat dripped down her back. She felt a cold chill run down her spine. This person really dared to kill them, and more importantly, he had the strength to do so. She clenched her teeth and said, "The hidden fog sex curse still has some loose ends, but this is the limit of what I can do." Hu Fu's eyes widened. The hidden fog sect members cried out in alarm. They never imagined that there would still be remnants of the curse left in their bodies. If it weren't for Chinyu discovering it, the consequences could be imagined. Thinking of this, all of them felt their hairs stand on end. "I beg Mister to save us." The hidden fog sect members all fell to their knees, using the authority of the leader to exchange for the interference of the arena's will. There was only one chance. Moreover, the Moonkeep Tower Master had followed orders and removed the curse from the hidden fog sect members. She hadn't violated the rules. So even though they knew that the curse hadn't completely disappeared, there was no way for them to ask the arena's will to help. In other words, everything that Hu Fu had done with his life on the line had been completely wasted. Now, the only one who could save them was Chinyu. Since you cannot make the decision, then find someone who can. Without waiting for the Moonkeep Tower Master to respond, Chinyu continued to say, "Don't say that you don't have a way. I don't want to say the same words a second time. You should understand what I mean." The Moonkeep Tower Master nodded. "I will follow my lord's will." Since she admitted it, she had already prepared herself. Today's events had indeed surpassed the limits of her control. As she knelt to the ground, the Moonkeep Tower Master began to recite something. Low and indistinct syllables spread through the air. No one could clearly hear what she was saying, but they could feel an indescribable pressure from it. It was like some formidable existence was about to descend upon Dragon City. Bang! With a dull rumble, space violently fluctuated. A vortex appeared, revealing an incomparably massive eye. "Why have you summoned me?" Powerful divine sense, fluctuations, swept through the entire audience. As it approached Chinyu, it suddenly stopped. In the next moment, the giant eye locked onto his figure. The Moonkeep Tower Master's tone was extremely respectful. She knelt down and bowed. "Reporting to my lord, this black-robed Mr. wishes to completely dispel the hidden fog sex curse. I cannot do this, so I can only ask for your judgment." Her eyes flashed with a cold intent. Even though she only vaguely knew of the influence behind Moonkeep Tower, even a small portion of it was astonishing enough. So what if this mysterious black-robed man was tyrannical? The Moonkeep Tower Master believed that as long as the great figures behind her were willing to help, suppressing him wouldn't be difficult at all. "If you allow me to summon the great figures, then I will fulfill your wish. I want to see just how long you can be arrogant for." But what happened next left the Moonkeep Tower Master's eyes wide open. The giant eye in the vortex stared at Chinyu for a moment and then said in a low voice, "I agree to this matter." As the words fell, the vortex dissipated, as if the owner of the eye didn't want to face Chinyu any longer. Or it was more accurate to say that it didn't want to face the aura that Chinyu emitted. But this sort of direct agreement and then immediately leaving, no matter how one looked at it, there was a hint of panic in it. For a time, everyone looked at Chinyu with increasingly awe in their eyes. The Moonkeep Tower Master was stunned. Her complexion paled even further. Luckily, when she spoke just now, she didn't reveal her inner thoughts. Otherwise, even if this black-robed man killed her, she feared the great figures behind her wouldn't say anything. Just who was this person? Even the great figures feared him to such an extent. An independent small world that was layered on top of the main world. There was a vast space within, and it could even receive the power of the sun, moon, and stars. At this time, the sun was shining brightly. In a massive mountain valley, there was a grand palace built into the side of a mountain. A group of black-clothed cultivators stood on both sides of a long table. Third from the left, an old man opened his eyes. One of his eyes was normal, and the other was a strange silver pupil. He looked at everyone and said in a low voice, "There was an accident." When my consciousness descended, I felt the aura of the Dragon City Master. Then he recounted what happened just now. Impossible. That powerful Dragon City Master was killed hundreds of thousands of years ago. You and I are both sure of this. In the ancestral land, his body is still suppressed. It is impossible for the Dragon City Master to resurrect. Third Elder, is there a possibility that your senses were wrong? The third Elder shook his head. The Dragon City Master has fought with my clan many times. The memories passed down by our ancestors are completely the same as the aura I felt today. I am sure that what that black-robed man released was the aura of the Dragon City Master. The hall fell silent. The elders on both sides of the table tightly frowned. If the third elder was so sure, then the chances of him being wrong were extremely low. If it really was the aura of the Dragon City Master, could it be that he hadn't died yet? No one dared to be sure of this. After all, a peerless powerhouse that had reached that level of strength would have all sorts of inconceivable methods. Even if their body was torn apart and their soul was swallowed and scattered, there was still a chance of resurrection. If the Dragon City Master were to resurrect, a storm of blood would surely rise in this world. It had to be known that when he perished in the past, some people had played an extremely dishonorable role. Luckily, although their ink race was hostile to the Dragon City Master, they hadn't interfered in the war of the past. Even if he were to resurrect, he shouldn't come looking for them. Soon, the elders reached a decision. They agreed to the black-robed cultivator's request and completely lifted the curse on the hidden fog sect. To offend the resurrected Dragon City Master for such a minor matter wasn't worth it at all. Although it was a loss of face to these old fellows that had lived for countless years, there were times when something like face could be thrown away. Pa, in the ancestral land, a jade card hanging in midair shattered. This represented that the curse that had enslaved the hidden fog sect for hundreds of thousands of years had completely dissipated. A gust of wind blew past, setting off a series of soft, rustling sounds. Looking around, one could see countless jade cards hanging from the ceiling of the cave with red ropes. The number was incalculable. Beast fighting arena. Qin Yu lightly said, "The curse has been lifted." In this state, he could feel a change in the morale of the hidden fog sect cultivators. They were no longer as gloomy and cold as before. Hu Fu's heart relaxed. He trembled as he fell to his knees. He could no longer withstand the weakness in his body and closed his eyes forever. There was a grateful smile on his face. "Teacher, this disciple didn't disappoint your expectations. I did it." Sect Master. With sorrowful cries, the hidden fog sect cultivators gathered around, their eyes red. They clenched their jaws. As they looked at Radiance Temple's stone platform, their killing intent rose. Although they knew that there was another influence behind Moonkeep Tower, they were still hateful. This was also the only thing they could do for Sect Master Hu Fu. The Moonkeep Tower Master was nervous. She didn't care about the hidden fog sect cultivators, but Qin Yu's attitude would determine their life or death. She took a deep breath and cautiously said, "My lord, can we leave now?" Qin Yu waved his hand. The Moonkeep Tower Master was overjoyed. After bowing, she led the cultivators behind her away, afraid that he would change his mind. The hidden fog sect didn't stop them. What they needed to do now was to bring Sect Master Hu Fu's body back to the sect so he could rest in peace. An elder bowed. "Mister, as Sect Master Hu Fu said, we will engrave your graciousness in our hearts." All the hidden fog sect cultivators knelt to the ground and then left with Hu Fu's corpse. The atmosphere was solemn and bleak. Watching them leave, Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. "The Beast King War has ended. You can all leave." No one dared to object. The cultivators, watching from all over, bowed and left. Soon, The massive arena became empty. There was only Qin Yu, his disciple, and the puppet controlled by the sage. Chapter 781. The puppet cultivator controlled by Sage bowed. "My lord, please speak." Qin Yu lifted a finger. "In the Hidden Fog sect, we both agreed to use the result of the Beast King War to decide the ownership of the chaotic Sky Chronicle. Although the process was a bit unpleasant, I have now one. Counselor Sage, there is no need to deny it. Although there is no direct evidence of what happened to me before, you can freely verify it. As for these unpleasant matters, I can pretend that they didn't happen. The Dark Parliament only needs to abide by the bet and not act against my disciple or her future descendants in the future. As long as Counselor Sage agrees, this matter will end here. You and I can pretend that we never came into contact and walk our separate paths." Sage thought for a moment. He said, "My lord's broad-mindedness leaves me in admiration. According to reason, you have already made concessions, and the Dark Parliament should return the favor and abide by the bet. But this matter is not something that I can decide alone. I hope that my lord can give me some time." Qin Yu lightly said, "You can summon the Dark Parliament counselors now. I will wait here for your reply." Sage cupped his hands together. "Then, I ask my lord to wait a moment." He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. The puppet cultivator that was being controlled fell into a deep slumber. Yun Dai's face was filled with gratitude. "Teacher, thank you." Qin Yu waved his hand, not saying anything. He looked at the puppet controlled by Sage, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Borrowing the strength of the Ancient's consciousness to help the Hidden Fog sect was one of the reasons. He also wanted to use this chance to deter the Dark Parliament and avoid conflict with them. Although with the existence of the Ancient's consciousness, Qin Yu was confident he could protect himself even if the Dark Parliament attacked. He didn't want to use too much of the Ancient's strength. He hoped that the Dark Parliament would retreat in the face of difficulties. Otherwise, if he wanted to safely leave Dragon City today, he feared there would be a great deal of trouble. Dark Parliament headquarters, in a hall illuminated by torches, 6 counselors gathered around a round table. Sage relayed Qin Yu's words. He swept his eyes over the crowd. "Fellow counselors, Ning Qin's strength and status have surpassed our expectations time and time again. With the strength he erupted with today, continuing to be enemies with him is not a wise choice." After a brief pause, he continued, "So my proposal is to agree to Ning Qin's request in exchange for reconciliation with him. For the Dark Parliament, this is the best choice." "I object." Oriol's tender and childish voice was incomparably sharp at this moment. Flames gathered in her eyes, and they flashed with madness and stubbornness. "The Chaos Sky Chronicle is related to a great secret. It is the goal that the Dark Parliament has been painstakingly pursuing for countless years. You and I are well aware of its importance. If we can't obtain the chaotic Sky Chronicle, we won't have any harvests even after 100,000 years." Limitless, gloomy voice flowed with a chill. "Counselor Oriol's attitude is the same as mine. The Book of the Chaos is the Parliament's most important goal. We absolutely cannot lose it." Sage frowned. He said in a low voice, "But in the current situation, if we refuse to abide by the bet, we will completely break off relations with Ning Qin. Have you thought about the consequences? Not only will the existence of the Parliament be exposed, but we will also have to bear the brunt of his frenzied revenge. Ning Qin's wrath will definitely cause great losses to the Parliament. It might even shake the very foundation of the Parliament. I don't think anyone wants to see this happen." Jasmine nodded. "I agree with Counselor Sage's words. The risk of breaking off relations with Ning Qin is too high. If we can't obtain the chaotic Sky Chronicle, the Council can still think of other methods. There is a chance of success." The always silent Counselor Lone Mountain suddenly opened his mouth. "I admit that the other methods that Counselor Jasmine spoke of are indeed possible. But how long will it take to find them? 1,000 years? 10,000 years? or perhaps even longer. He swept his eyes over the crowd. Flames condensed around his body, and he exuded a bone-chilling chill. This amount of time may not be much to you counselors, but I cannot afford to wait. If I give up on the chaotic Sky Chronicle and can't find a new solution, I will exhaust my lifespan and die. So this time, no matter what, I will not give up. If the Parliament decides to compromise, I will choose to withdraw from the Dark Parliament. No one can stop me from obtaining the chaotic Sky Chronicle, not even those present here. The air seemed to be filled with the scent of blood. The round table fell deathly silent. Sage and Jasmine felt a headache coming on. They were convinced that with Counselor Lone Mountain's crazy temperament, he would absolutely do what he said. Oriole screamed, "Sage, do you really want to force a counselor to leave the Parliament? Such consequences are truly unbearable." The Dark Parliament only had 7 counselors. Unless a counselor died, it was impossible to add more. This was because every counselor was an indispensable part of the Dark Parliament. Losing a counselor meant that the Dark Parliament would no longer be complete and its strength would be greatly weakened. With an erratic aura, Counselor Moonshadow said, "In my heart, I agree with Counselor Sage's proposal. Becoming enemies with Ning Qin is indeed a terrible decision. But regretfully, because of some reasons that are difficult to express, I am facing the same situation as Counselor Lone Mountain. If I cannot unravel that secret as soon as possible, I will likely decay and die. I am unwilling to accept such a fate. So, even though I know that this is wrong, I still have to fight. I agree with Counselor Oriole's proposal and refuse to compromise." A crucial vote, 4-2. Even if Sage used his status as a temporary speaker, he would only have 3 votes at most. He would still be in the minority. Jasmine opened her mouth, but in the end she didn't say anything. She looked at Counselor Moonshadow, a complex expression in her eyes. In the face of life or death, nothing mattered. So she wasn't angry at Moonshadow's betrayal, but she was still willing to make one final effort, because her intuition told her that becoming enemies with Ning Qin was the worst decision the Dark Parliament could make. As time passed, this feeling didn't weaken at all. Rather, it became increasingly intense. I propose that before we break off relations with Ning Qin, we try one last conciliatory plan. We would use a transaction to obtain the chaotic Sky Chronicle. As long as he is willing, the Dark Parliament can accept any conditions. I believe that none of the other counselors will oppose this. Limitless said, yes. If he had a choice, he wasn't willing to take this risk. Oriole sneered. What a naive and childish idea. It is impossible to succeed. Jasmine lightly said, even if there is only a sliver of hope, we should still try. Sage made the final decision. Then it is decided. On behalf of all the counselors, I will express the Dark Parliament's stance to Ning Qin. Shua, the flaming figure, faded away. The other counselors hadn't left yet. They would wait here for Sage to bring back peace or war. That's right. With the strength that Qinyu had revealed, breaking off relations with him would be a war that the Dark Parliament would need to go all out. Beast fighting arena. The puppet controlled by Sage woke up. The moment Qinyu saw Sage's eyes, his heart sank. He had a foreboding premonition. And as he thought, Sage's following words confirmed his thoughts. My lord, I have already brought back the Dark Parliament's final decision. Although we know that to be enemies with you is an extremely foolish thing to do, I apologize that we have no other choice. So regarding the bet, we will have to break our word. But we still hope that my lord can hand over Yundai to us in a peaceful manner. For this, the Dark Parliament is willing to bear any price and give my lord sufficient rewards. I hope that you can seriously consider this. Peace or war, that is all up to you. After speaking, Sage straightened his body. He looked at Qinyu, waiting for his response. Beside him, the nervous Yundai instantly paled. Her body shivered as she looked at her teacher. Qinyu's silence undoubtedly indicated that he was withstanding a great deal of pressure. As expected, these people possessed a strength that even her teacher wasn't willing to provoke. Yundai thought that she should do something. Even if she couldn't repay her teacher, she couldn't drag him into this quagmire. But before she could speak, Chinyu raised a hand and interrupted her. If I can't even protect my own disciple, then what use is there in cultivating? He nodded at Sage. Then let us go to war. In truth, to Chinyu, this was an unwise decision. But there were some bottom lines that should always be upheld, even if there was a price to pay. Sage sighed inwardly. This result wasn't beyond his expectations. He bowed and respectfully said, "Then, I ask my lord to take care of yourself." He turned and walked away. Chin, you didn't stop him. It was only a puppet. It wasn't worth wasting his strength on. If it were Sage himself, he wouldn't mind attacking and cutting down the senator where he stood. Since they had chosen war, only the destruction of one side could end all of this. "Teacher." Tears streamed down Yundai's face. "Chin, you lightly said, since I know that saving you took a great deal of effort, you must live well in the future. That way, everything I have done won't be in vain." Yundai nodded. At this moment, she recognized that the man in front of her was the one she would rely on for the rest of her life, one that could no longer be replaced. Chinyu stood up and took her hand. "Let's go." His steps weren't fast, but with every step he took, he crossed a great distance. After several breaths of time, he arrived at the edge of the arena. In a temporarily uninhabited courtyard, he lifted a hand and pushed open the door. And behind the door was an open spatial gate. Chinyu turned and said, "Hide inside. When it's safe, I will bring you out." Yundai didn't hesitate. After respectfully bowing to Chinyu, she stepped inside. She was well aware that if she stayed behind, she would only be a burden to her teacher. The spatial gate dissipated with it. Chinyu let out a breath, a helpless expression on his face. In the end, things had developed in the worst possible direction. It was truly distressing. But luckily, after sending Yundai into the Yellow Springs mystic realm, he could attack without any scruples. By borrowing the strength of the ancient's consciousness, it shouldn't be too difficult to escape. He turned and left. This time, Chinyu didn't stop. He flew straight out of Dragon City. Because he couldn't conceal his aura, his momentum was astonishing as he left. Massive tracts of space shattered around him, causing endless heaven and earth spiritual strength to rise up. Deep rumbling sounds rang out, attracting many awe and awe. It's that mysterious lord from the Hidden Fog sect. Many cultivators sighed. Chapter 782. Stepping out of Dragon City. Chin, you stepped through the void. Every step he took caused space to twist. Then his figure vanished, and when he reappeared, he was far away. But after calmly walking forwards for a moment, Chinyu had no choice but to stop. He looked up and saw a Taoist blocking his way. He had straw sandals on his feet and a bamboo cane in his hand. His slightly messy white hair was still stained with dewdrops that had yet to dry. Looking at the straw sandals and mud on his straw sandals, he looked like he had just come out of some vegetable garden. If it weren't for the fact that his hair was tied up in a bun with a wooden stick, then his dark and wrinkled face would have been that of an old farmer working in the fields. As Chinyu looked at him, the Taoist also looked up at him. His eyes were bright and sharp, like a meteor that cut across the horizon, bringing with it a brilliance that one couldn't look directly at. Then he placed a hand in front of him and bowed. Taoist faction's 39th generation disciple, Wu Ye, greets Dragon City Master. Chinyu frowned. He knew that this Taoist had misunderstood him, but there was no way to explain this. By borrowing the strength of the ancient's consciousness, his current aura was completely the same as before. "Taoist, why are you blocking me?" Wu Ye revealed a helpless expression. "In truth, I also don't want to face the incomparably powerful Dragon City Master. But my Taoist faction was personally destroyed by you in the past. The Taoist faction suffered disastrous losses and nearly lost all of their teachings. If I didn't come today, I feared my spine would have been broken by the little Taoists of my sect. So, after hesitating again and again, I still came. Qin Yu expressed his understanding. Then, Taoist, are you preparing to kill me? Wu Yi nodded. I was prepared to do so. Although attacking now is a bit like taking advantage of someone in a precarious situation, if I allow you to continue restoring your strength, I fear I won't have the courage to do so. Of course, even if you are in your weakest state right now, I still don't have the slightest confidence that I will die today. If that is the case, then I hope that you can be a bit more straightforward. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but although I have lived for many years, I still haven't recovered from my childhood fear of pain. Qin Yu nodded. Very well, I promise you. Hold on. Wu Yi had a constipated expression on his face, the wrinkles on his dark face nearly piling up together. For someone like you, don't you always say something like, you overestimate yourself? I'll do this and that, I'll do this and that before you attack? Why are you so straightforward? I wanted to take a few more breaths of fresh air before I die while you were talking. Qin Yu, are you kidding me? Wu Yi awkwardly smiled. I've let you laugh at me. All right, I won't waste any more of your time. I'm going to make my move. This self-proclaimed little Taoist, Wu Yi attacked, causing Qin Yu's heart to go cold. A ray of sword light pierced through space, so fast that he couldn't even see clearly how he had attacked, and the sword light was already right in front of him. Apart from its speed, this sword light did not seem to have any other merits. Its aura was ordinary and did not have a hint of sharpness. However, Qin Yu felt a great threat from this sword, and he didn't doubt that if he couldn't block it, this sword was enough to cut him in half from head to toe, and then explode into a pile of broken bones and rotten flesh. In terms of Qin Yu's cultivation, it could be said that the game of his life had already come to an end when facing this sword. Luckily, he was in a cheat-like state right now. By borrowing the power of the ancient's consciousness, he was able to clearly grasp the trajectory of this sword. As long as he could see it clearly, he should be able to block this sword. Thus, Qin Yu lifted his hand and grasped forwards. This simple movement instantly sucked in all the air between the heavens and earth. A violent sonic boom echoed out in all directions. Because space couldn't withstand the strength, a massive area began to collapse. That sword that pierced through space, that sword that was so fast that it had no friends, was directly grasped like this. Bang! A terrifying self-detonation occurred. But all of the strength was imprisoned between Qin Yu's fingers, without a single bit leaking out. And besides his palm being shaken and numb, he didn't feel any other discomfort. It was like he had released a loud but limited firecracker through his glove. Blood gushed out from every orifice of Wu Yi's head. Tears swelled in his eyes. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts too much. Hurry up and release me from this pain. Remember what you promised me. You had to be straightforward. Qin Yu pursed his lips and punched out. Dong! There was a deep and dull sound, like a leather drum being struck. Wu Yi was sent flying backwards, his chest deeply caved in. The light in his eyes rapidly faded, and there was a trace of joy on his face. It seemed that this person really was afraid of pain. Qin Yu shook his head. He didn't want to engage in senseless slaughter, but Wu Yi had a reason to attack, and it was impossible for him to be stopped here. Killing him was the only solution. Qin Yu didn't think too much about it. He continued forwards. But not long after, someone blocked his path again. This time it was a woman. Her figure was domineering, and her style was bold. She wore a long red dress, revealing everything that should and shouldn't be revealed. The wind ruffled her dress, revealing her slender and fair thighs. All the way to the base of her thighs, the fragrance of makeup wafted through the air. If you appear here, that means that hateful old mongrel has already gone underground to eat dirt. Just how long has it been? The legendary Dragon City Master, even in his weakened state, still possesses such terrifying strength. It really makes my heart skip a beat." As she spoke, she winked at him. Qin Yu was expressionless. "Leave or die." The woman had a sad expression. "Am I not beautiful? You actually dare to say such cruel words." Qin Yu stepped forwards. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. A terrifying strength instantly arrived, rushing towards her from all directions like raging waves crashing against the shore. What was strange was that the woman didn't dodge and was directly sucked in. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with surprise, but he didn't hesitate to attack. His fingers clenched. Bang! The beautiful woman and her red dress were torn apart by a formidable strength. Her flesh and blood danced in the air, giving off a strange sense of beauty. But Qin Yu didn't leave. Instead, a dignified expression appeared on his face. In the next moment, the woman's helpless voice sounded out. "You really are a cruel man. You can even do something like this to me. You are so unromantic. You are destined to be lonely for the rest of your life." Space twisted and the tyrannical woman in the red dress appeared. She lifted a hand and brushed her hair back. "Hey, you already killed me once. Don't you feel any guilt at all?" Qin Yu's eyes fell on the pile of minced meat. The smell of blood clearly wasn't an illusion. He looked at the lively woman in front of him, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He stepped forwards. With him as the center, a terrifying strength recklessly spread outwards. Space collapsed inch by inch, and in the blink of an eye, everything within 100 miles was covered. "Found you." Qin Yu suddenly attacked. His finger thrust out like lightning. The expression of the woman in the red dress changed drastically. She clearly did not expect that her strongest technique would be so easily broken through. Bang! Her body violently exploded. A powerful strength rushed towards Qin Yu like a raging tide, trying to stop him from attacking. But she had clearly underestimated the strength of the ancient's consciousness. Even if she had only lent a small portion of it to Qin Yu, it still wasn't something she could contend with. Facing the explosive impact, Qin Yu didn't dodge at all. His fingers shot out like an arrow, instantly piercing through her. There was a sudden scream. It was like countless needles were ruthlessly stabbing into her head and twisting about. Qin Yu's finger paused for a moment, but in the next moment, his speed suddenly accelerated. He deviated from his original position and pointed downwards. His fingertips felt a touch of softness and warmth. In the next moment, space rapidly swelled up like an inflated balloon. With a loud bang, space shattered and an exquisitely sewn rag doll appeared in Qin Yu's hand. Her features were picturesque and she was tall. She wore a long red dress and looked exactly the same as the woman who had died twice in a row. At this time, the rag doll in Qin Yu's hand began to emit flames. These flames were a strange, deep red, like burning blood. They didn't emit any heat, only an endless chill. A layer of blood-red ice rapidly formed on the surface of Qin Yu's palm. Then it rapidly spread upwards. Humph! With a cold cough, Qin Yu's arm shook and the layer of ice instantly shattered. The blood-red flames on the rag doll surface seemed to fall into a vacuum, quickly extinguishing. Its eyes turned and the sewn face became vivid. It looked at Qin Yu with fear and begged, "Dragon City Master, I know I was wrong. I only came here on orders. I hope that you can be magnanimous and spare me this time. In return, I am willing to follow you and serve you with my life." Qin Yu lightly said, "You abandoned your mortal body and cultivated this nearly undying and indestructible puppet body. I fear that the sins you have committed are innumerable. I don't need such a subordinate, so you should just accept the fate you deserve." He lifted his other hand and touched the point between the rag doll's eyebrows. With a light cracking sound, it was like something had broken inside. "No," the rag doll screamed. Its beautiful face twisted and its bright eyes were filled with fear. Qin Yu released his hand and it turned to flee. But before it could fly too far, it emitted a miserable scream. black smoke rose up from the rag doll, turning into resentful spirits that exuded resentment. They were all beautiful women, but the surface of these resentful spirits was covered with cracks, as if they had been torn apart countless times and then sewn back together. It was strange and horrifying. These resentful spirits bowed to Chinyu and then crazily threw themselves at the rag doll. Heart-piercing screams filled the air, accompanied by the sound of cloth being torn apart. "Master, save me! Master, save me!" Chin, you looked up into the distance. 3 beams of light howled towards him, each one emitting a powerful aura that left one's heart racing. Shwa! The beams of light converged, revealing 3 figures that looked exactly the same. They wore brightly colored robes, and there was a red cinnabar between their eyebrows. They were handsome and exuded an enchanting charm. "You damaged my doll. Even if you are the Dragon City Master, you must also die." Each person spoke. Their voices and tone were exactly the same, as if they were the same person. But they were indeed 3 independent cultivators. Chin, you couldn't have sensed this wrong. Thinking about it, these 3 people must have cultivated some cultivation method from the same origin. Thus they gave off such a strange feeling. The resentful spirits that were crazily tearing at the rag doll screamed and fled, as if they could feel a fatal threat. Humph! The 3 people coldly coughed. Bang, bang! All of the resentful spirits exploded, turning into a massive black fog that covered the entire area. You released them. Then I will use their strength. I will kill you here. Chapter 783. Dark Parliament Headquarters. Along a long corridor, the 6 senators silently walked forwards. Their bodies, formed from flames, barely illuminated the surrounding darkness. After a moment, they stood in front of a giant stone door. Sage stopped and turned. "Have we still not contacted Senator Morningstar?" Jasmine shook her head. "I can't find his aura. It seems to be blocked by some strength." "Humph!" Oriole sneered. "It's fine if he's usually so casual, but today this matter concerns the future of the Dark Parliament, and he's also absent. Morningstar has gone too far." The Dark Parliament had 7 senators, and each one was a unique existence. Without any one of them, the Dark Parliament would be incomplete. Sage lifted a hand. "Enough. Since things have come to this, there is no point in speaking further. Moreover, Senator Morningstar doesn't know that something like this would happen." He swept his eyes around. "With the 6 of us together, although we won't be able to display our greatest strength, we won't be too far off. And most importantly, it won't be just the Dark Parliament that will act today. We can join forces with other influences. As long as we can kill Ningqin, we will have achieved our goal. Let's not delay any further. Let's begin." He turned and flicked his sleeves. The stone door quietly opened. Sage was the first to step in, with the other 5 senators following behind him. Several breaths of time later, there was a loud, rumbling sound from within the stone door, as if something heavy was being pushed aside and rubbing against each other. Shwa! A pair of giant eyes opened. They were dark and gloomy. This deathly still and icy cold aura seemed capable of freezing one's soul. 2 towering mountains pointed into the skies, their peaks sinking deep into the clouds. They were very close to each other, nearly blocking out all the light that sprinkled down. Thus, the abyss between the 2 mountains became increasingly dark, as if it were the entrance to hell. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew, blowing the thick trees and making a loud, rustling sound. Hoo! Hoo! White energy rose up from the abyss. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a thick fog. No matter how the wind howled, it wasn't able to move it in the least. This strange scene continued for a moment. Then the darkness in the abyss began to tumble and tumble. A giant claw stretched out from within, easily piercing through the mountain rocks like tofu, then borrowing the strength to drag its massive body out from the darkness. The ferocious wolf head was covered in iron needle-like black fur. A long scar appeared on the hardest part of the skull. It started from the lower left corner of the eye and slanted upwards across the forehead to the root of the right ear. Its left eye was already blind, and a large part of its right ear had been cut off. The scar on its skull had yet to heal even after tens of thousands of years of recuperation. This wound was left behind by the master it had once served many, many years ago. It thought that it would be the last time it saw its master, but now he was back. The one-eyed, earless black wolf was unwilling to believe it, but the trembling in his heart could not be wrong. That was the aura of his master. Looking back at the abyss that he had lived in for hundreds of thousands of years, Black Wolf could not help but wonder if his choice to betray was a mistake. But this thought was destined to not be answered. The black wolf leaped, and the white fog floating above the abyss landed under its feet. It carried it directly into the space and disappeared in the violent fluctuations. The great river crashed down from high above, tearing apart the mountain peaks and forming many strange and precipitous mountain peaks. A dilapidated thatched hut was built near the river. If one sat in front of the hut, they could feel the moist air blowing against their faces. The straw mat on the roof was mostly in tatters. If a strong wind blew past, it was likely that it would be sent flying into the roaring river and instantly torn to pieces. But it had already stood here for many, many years, so long that no one remembered when it had first appeared. In this lonely thatched hut lived a lonely old woman. She always combed her white hair neatly and wore a cotton dress that seemed as if it would never be changed. Every morning the old woman would leave the house punctually. She would hold a fishing rod in her hand and cast a hook into the river. When a fish took the bait, the old woman would raise the fishing rod and light a fire to cook. A single fish was her daily rations. No matter how big or small it was, she would never fish a second time. In the distance, there were figures on several steep peaks. Each cultivator had their eyes wide open, waiting for the old woman to open the door and fish. They didn't know the old woman's identity, nor did they know why she lived here. But there was one thing they were certain of. This common-looking old woman that didn't have any fluctuations of strength around her was a true supreme being. There were powerhouses that tried to probe her, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't approach the lonely peak. That mountain, that person was clearly in front of them, but it seemed as if they were separated by endless rivers and mountains, as if they existed in another space. She came out. With a suppressed shout, the door to the thatched hut opened from the inside. An old woman with neat white hair walked out, holding a fishing rod in her hand. She ignored the awe and curiosity of everyone around her. She walked to the cliff and sat down. Then she cast the hook into the river. Rumble, rumble. The great river surged forwards. The old woman, sitting on the riverbank, seemed particularly small. But at this moment, all the cultivators' eyes were focused on her, their eyes filled with fascination and fascination. Fishing was dull and boring, but in their eyes it seemed to contain the charm of the great Tao, causing countless lights to burst out in their minds. Ah, I've understood. I've finally understood. A cultivator cried out, his face filled with ecstasy. He stood up and bowed towards the old woman. I thank Senior for all your guidance over the years. This Junior will never forget this for the rest of his life. The old woman, who had always been indifferent to everyone, turned around and nodded. The cultivator was immediately overwhelmed by the favor. But before he could speak again, the motionless old woman suddenly lifted the fishing rod. Bang! The river water exploded. The vast and mighty river seemed to be cut off from the middle. An incomparably massive shadow was pulled out of the water. It had the head of a cow, but the body of a fish. There were sharp claws under its abdomen, and its tail was like a scorpion's. With a low moo, the monster beast was thrown ashore. Its eyes were filled with panic, but it didn't dare to run away. It lay there, its body shivering. The old woman put down the fishing rod and lightly said, You have borrowed my aura to cultivate here for 10,000 years. Today you will be my mount. Once we reach our destination, I will naturally let you go." She took a step forwards and flew onto the monster beast's back. She underwent an astonishing transformation in midair, as if time had reversed. In a single breath of time, the old woman turned into a young woman in her 20s. The only thing that didn't change was the clothes she wore. They were still gray and inconspicuous. As she stood on the monster beast's back, the wind swirled around her long hair. At this moment, all the cultivators were left dumbfounded, as if they were looking at a goddess that would ascend to the heavens. Moo! With a deep roar, the monster leapt into the river. Carrying the woman on its back, it drilled into the river bed and disappeared. A massive shadow came from the distance. Wherever it passed, the world fell into darkness, as if yin and yang had been reversed. The surrounding aura tumbled endlessly, like a pot of boiled porridge, isolating itself from the outside world. Another figure with a blurry face, wrapped in dense holy light, came from the direction of the west tomb. Heaven and earth, spiritual strength gathered around him, condensing into tiny holy spirits that surrounded him, praising him and prostrating themselves at his side. In the extreme north, in a world of ice and snow all year round, there was a young man who wore thick beast skins and had a body as strong as an iron tower. He carried a long spear on his back as he walked forwards. His expression was firm and his eyes seemed solid. It was like even if the world collapsed, his mind wouldn't be shaken. One after another, powerhouses that stood at the peak of the world began to gather from all directions. Because of various reasons, none of them hoped that the Dragon City Master would be able to resurrect. Thus, they wanted to kill him when he was at his weakest. Winds rose and clouds gathered. A grand momentum that would sweep through the world was rapidly taking shape. If Qin Yu could have predicted this, would he have regretted helping the Hidden Fog sect and falling into such a dangerous situation? Of course, this was only an assumption. With Qin Yu's current weak understanding of the Tao of Time, it would be countless years before he could reverse time. But he had to survive the present. If he were to be killed here, there would be no future, and everything would come to nothing. The black fog loudly shattered. The three men that looked exactly the same, each of them saying a single sentence, each with a clear division of labor and perfect coordination. All of the light in their eyes faded away. They were like three statues that had lost all aura of life. They fell from the skies. Their bodies were like stones that had been weathered for countless years. They rapidly turned into powder that dissipated in the wind. Qin Yu stepped forwards, his eyebrows furrowed together. He felt that something wasn't right. Whether it was Taoist Wuya, the beautiful doll, or even the most fierce of these three cultivators that couldn't even withstand a single blow from Qin Yu. Was this the Dark Parliament's response to him breaking off relations with them? It was like they were delivering their heads to him. If this was true, then it would be a joke. No, something was very wrong. Qin Yu's frown deepened. He thought of a possibility, and that was that these cultivators that came to die were stalling for time while the Dark Parliament prepared their true methods. As soon as he thought of this, Qin Yu stepped forwards. Space rumbled and collapsed, forming a giant black hole. A space channel formed and he stepped into it. But the moment he entered, a sense of foreboding rose up in his mind. Before Qin Yu could think of anything else, his body instinctively attacked. He punched out. In the next moment, the space channel was torn apart. This was an incomparably massive claw that shined with a metallic light. Fist and claw collided. A powerful shaking strength rushed forwards. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, but he didn't take half a step back. Forcefully resisting the shaking strength, he took a step forwards. He raised his hand and clenched his fingers, ruthlessly grasping at the sharp claw. "Come out for me." With a deep roar, he forcefully pulled backwards. The black wolf's massive body smashed through the space channel and appeared. In its single eye, a trace of fear and panic flashed. But in the next moment, it turned into a cruel madness. Roar! With a roar, a terrifying aura erupted. The phantom of a winged heavenly wolf appeared behind the black wolf, its pitch-black eyes locked onto Chinyu. A formidable swallowing strength instantly erupted from the heavenly wolf phantom. It directly affected the soul, wanting to pull it out and swallow it. Chinyu remained expressionless. He lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. In that instant, there was a thunderous roar. Even in the turbulent flows of space, one could feel the vast and boundless potential. Blue point, first finger, boundless, boundless. With a single finger, the boundless heavens and earth swept out in all directions. With the strength of the ancients' consciousness attacking, this supernatural power erupted with a terrifying might that surpassed one's imagination. The black wolf arched his back, his black fur standing on end. His single eye revealed a look of fear. With a deep roar, rich black energy gushed out from his body, weaving together into a thick layer. In the next moment, the howling finger struck the black energy. Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, a massive mass of black energy was blown apart, tumbling and dissipating in the air. One could faintly see the black wolf's shivering figure. It was clear that even though it had blocked this finger, it had paid a certain price. But even now, the heavenly wolf phantoms, swallowing strength towards Chinyu's soul, hadn't weakened in the least. Damn it, if you don't do anything, then I can only run away. The black wolf spat out, his voice filled with hate. He was well aware that the first one to attack would eventually be used as a chess piece. But after feeling Chinyu's aura, the fear and anxiety in his heart made it so that he couldn't wait any longer. The only good news was that everyone's judgment was correct. Although his master had resurrected, he was in an extremely weak state. Otherwise, with his master's cultivation, if he were in his peak state, he would only need a single finger to crush him to death. Now was the best and only chance to kill him. He absolutely couldn't miss this chance. The existence hidden in the shadows had clearly made a similar judgment. So, not long after the black wolf roared, a radiant light appeared. It condensed into a single point, piercing through the turbulent flows of space and locking onto Chinyu's eyes. It was tyrannical and overbearing, and there was also a tragic momentum to it. One could hear the howls and howls of countless departed souls, filled with hatred and fear. These were the living beings that had been killed by this light, the gathering of their everlasting resentment. But this didn't affect the one who attacked at all. Instead, it added an even more terrifying might to this strike. Chapter 784. Chinyu frowned. He lifted a hand and thrust out a second finger. After this finger fell, figures began to appear in the turbulent space. There were humans, monster beasts, and even some broken and incomplete shadows that were filled with unwillingness. These were lingering obsessions that wouldn't scatter even after death. Now that they were drawn over by this finger, they rapidly fused into the finger's shadow. Their color rapidly darkened, like a thick cumulus cloud before a torrential downpour. The second finger, blue spirit finger. This was to summon the undying obsessions of the world for one's own use. The radiant light on the surface of the black vault of heaven instantly disintegrated. The spear's shaft withstood the impact of the strength and violently trembled. It stopped in midair, as if it were being suppressed by an invisible strength, but also as if it were struggling to resist something. At the end of the spear, a spear-wielding young man appeared. The thick beast hide covering his body was shattered by the powerful strength, revealing his bare upper body. Large and small scars covered nearly every inch of his flesh and blood. At this time, as his blood vitality boiled, the scars rapidly turned crimson red, like blood-sucking insects crawling over his body. His heart violently beat. The low and deep sound carried with it a strength that penetrated into the heart, causing one's mind to tremble. Although he withstood a horrifying pressure, this man from the northern frontier still stood tall and straight. He was like a cedar that grew in a world of ice and snow, not bending in the least no matter how much snow covered him. Qin, you looked at the bare-chested young man. His eyes flashed. You come from the Dark Parliament. He slowly shook his head. I come from the northern frontier. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He didn't know where the northern frontier was or what influence it represented. But there was one thing he was sure of. Those that tried to kill him today weren't all from the Dark Parliament. Or, it was more accurate to say that the Dark Parliament was only one of the influences. Through the information he had gathered before, it wasn't hard for Qin Yu to judge that the reason these people attacked him was because they saw him as the dragon's city master. In other words, Qin Yu had suffered an undeserved calamity. He had been schemed against by the ancient. Although he didn't know what his goal was, he was well aware of the consequences of Qin Yu borrowing his strength. But even if he was schemed against, Qin Yu didn't have anything to complain about. This was because this was something he had requested to begin with. If it weren't for helping the hidden fog sect, he wouldn't have needed to do anything, and he wouldn't have been placed in his current situation. Sure enough, being a good person was not an easy task. But thinking about it from another angle, even if Qin Yu didn't do anything, and the Dark Parliament tore up the agreement, in order to protect himself, he feared that in the end he would have to borrow the strength of the ancient's will. It was only a matter of time. Shaking his head, Zhang Xian suppressed his thoughts. There was no point in thinking about it now. No matter what the ancient wanted to do, for the time being, Qin Yu could only follow its prescribed script. However, even though Black Wolf and the man from the northern border were powerful, they could only temporarily restrain him. It was impossible for them to kill him. It seemed like there were still people watching in the dark. Otherwise, how could Black Wolf and this man dare to attack him? As Qin Yu's thoughts raced here, a massive black shadow appeared in the turbulent space flows. It was so large that it seemed to cover all. Darkness descended like an eternal night. And in this darkness, Qin Yu could clearly feel the boiling strength around him, gradually cutting off his connection to the outside world, isolating him and isolating him. This was an extremely frightening matter. To a true peak powerhouse, they could summon a phenomenon of the world with just a thought and manipulate the strength of the world for their own use. With just a lift of their hand, they could erupt with dreadful might. If their connection to the outside world was cut off, that meant that they could only use their own strength to attack. Not only did this mean that their consumption of strength would rise, but it would also greatly reduce the power of their attack. It was the same as cutting off a cultivator's arm. Qin Yu's complexion darkened, starting from Black Wolf, then the spear-wielding youth from the northern border, and finally this strange black shadow. Although they erupted with a formidable strength, they didn't seem to have any desire to directly kill him. Or, it was more accurate to say that all of these people had chosen to constantly hinder him and weaken his strength. They were all waiting for the person who could truly kill Qin Yu to attack. That person must be here, waiting for the best opportunity to strike. Qin Yu's heart chilled, but he wasn't too afraid. No matter what the ancient's goal was, they wouldn't want him to die. Since they had intentionally led this situation to this point, they should have a way to resolve it. Suddenly, a new change occurred. In the deep darkness, a ray of light suddenly squeezed in. It illuminated the surroundings and sprinkled down a warm and auspicious aura. His face was blurry and his entire body was wrapped in a rich holy light. He was surrounded by countless knuckle-sized holy spirits, all of them devout and joyful as they sang praises to him. With just a glance, Qin Yu could determine that this figure wrapped in holy light was a powerhouse from the Western Tomb, Divine Church. He wasn't Ji Xiangtian, but his aura wasn't weak at all. Moreover, because of his pious beliefs, he could erupt with an even greater strength. The Western Tomb Divine Church's Judicial Department's chief seat executed all those who blasphemed heresy. Even if they fell into eternal hell, they still wouldn't allow anyone to show disrespect to him. At this time, the chief seat of the Western Tomb Divine Church attacked. He lifted a hand and a great sun descended. A terrifying, annihilating aura erupted. All heresy should die. Judgment of light. Bang! A great sun descended. It was like a true sun, releasing an astonishing heat as it smashed down on Chinyu. Seeing the judgment of light howl towards him, the holy light within Chinyu's body that was covered in blood vitality began to stir. As he thought about how he still had the status of the Western Tomb Divine Church's Saint Son, he couldn't help but feel a bit strange. But strange was just strange. Chinyu didn't believe that just because he had the power of holy light in his body, he would turn hostility into friendship. He feared that this crazy chief seat of the Western Tomb Divine Church would believe that he was blaspheming against the gods and recklessly try to kill him. Chinyu lifted a hand and thrust out his third finger today, the blue sea finger. This finger could change the world and reverse the momentum of the world. In terms of absolute power, it was far above the blue spirit finger and blue expanse finger. Rumble, rumble. Turbulent flows of space began to boil. Endless spiritual strength rumbled within, weaving together to form a magnificent picture scroll. Deep in the sea, a rock suddenly rose up from the seabed, piercing through the surface and growing until it finally turned into a giant mountain peak. Seawater surged in all directions, washing out canyons and rivers. The roaring seawater rushed out in all directions. There was also a stretch of mountain ranges. The mountain peaks shattered and collapsed amidst the tremors. Then the ground cracked open and sank continuously. Countless streams of water gathered, starting from a large lake and gradually turning into a boundless ocean. Cities turned into ruins and barren lands became densely populated. Giant beasts that lived in a certain era, because they couldn't adapt to the rapid changes in climate, rapidly went extinct, becoming fossils buried deep underground. Then new species were born, replacing the position of the giant beasts and becoming the new rulers of the world. To a certain extent, this could also be regarded as the power of time. The endless changes of the years were what caused the world to change into a mulberry field. Thus, within Chinyu's body, the Tao of time that couldn't even be considered the slightest bit was quietly activated. This sort of passive activation wasn't something that Chinyu actively used, so it didn't consume any of his energy. In fact, he didn't even notice this. But no matter how weak the Tao of time was, it was still a strength that stood at the peak of the world. After fusing into the blue expanse finger, it immediately underwent a fundamental change. At this moment, everyone could clearly hear the sound of a clock ticking in their ears. Tick, tick, tick. This was the flow of time. The Western Tomb Chief, Judgment's, complexion changed. Although he had never come into contact with the power of time, he could still feel the power contained within this finger. Even so, he didn't take half a step backwards. Instead, the aura of the light judgment rose once more. As a fanatic believer, in order to defend the ruler he believed in, he could give up his own life without hesitation. Rumble, rumble. There was a heaven-shaking explosion. The Judgment Chief, Judgment, stuffily coughed, and the sacred spirits flying around him shattered and dispersed. The fine wrinkles on his face suddenly deepened, and a turbid color appeared in his bright and firm eyes. The great sun manifested from the judgment of light shattered, but it did not disappear. Instead, every piece of it floated in midair. As the holy light filled the air, more holy spirits condensed, and the singing of praise became even louder. The Judgment Chief, Judgment was excited. He fell to his knees and deeply bowed his head. Lowly servant, I welcome your arrival. The holy light gathered to form a perfect figure. She had a pair of slender legs, a slender waist, and a perfectly shaped chest. Her face was blurry, but her eyes were particularly clear. They were transparent and bright, like a curved lake beneath the moonlight. She was gentle and affectionate, but also indifferent. Her eyes fell on the Judgment Chief, Judgment, and she lifted a finger. As this finger fell, the Judgment Chief, Judgment's weak aura rapidly recovered. In the blink of an eye, he returned to his peak state and continued to rise. The wrinkles on his face and the turbidity in his eyes rapidly disappeared. The Judgment Chief, Judgment, felt that his condition was better than ever. Even the hidden wounds left behind by the elimination of heresy were directly dispelled and healed by this warm strength. His expression became even more devout. His hands formed the seal of the Western tomb, and he respectfully kowtowed. "Thank you for your benevolence." The woman's voice was soft and gentle, carrying with it a trace of warmth that quietly seeped into his soul. "This is the repayment you deserve, devout believer of the Tao monarch. I, Dorlice, the Tao monarch's #1 messenger, have accepted your summons and descended to eliminate all evil heretics." The Judgment Chief, Judgment, excitedly roared out, "Only the Tao monarch lives forever!" Dorlice looked at Qinyu. A fluctuation flashed in her eyes, but beneath the cover of the holy light, no one noticed it. She took a step forward and raised her hand, pressing it down as she loudly chanted. Chapter 785. Every time Dorlice spoke, Qinyu's body confirmed something. He felt his soul suddenly fall into darkness and his body crazily fall, as if he were about to fall into the endless yellow springs of hell. His conscious mind could feel the cold winds around him, constantly cutting him like tiny ice blades. He instinctively wanted to struggle, but discovered that he couldn't do anything at all. This was because the strength of the world itself was suppressing him, forcing him to obediently wait for death to arrive. Of course, this feeling only lasted for a short period of time. After Dorelice's voice fell, Qinyu blinked his eyes, and all the pain faded away like a tide. Then, a trace of anger gushed out from his chest, igniting all the blood in his body like a raging flame. This was the self-confidence and pride of the ancient race. After being provoked and humiliated, this was an instinctive eruption. Qin, you didn't suppress his anger, so he opened his mouth and roared. Rumble, 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 like thunder. The phantom of a giant appeared behind him and smashed down with its hands. Just as this fist came out, the turbulent space around him completely rioted. Across from him, the beautiful Dorlice gently frowned. She spread out her arms, and 12 beautiful white wings spread out in 2 rows. The feathers on the surface of each wing emitted a holy light so rich that it nearly condensed into essence. Radiant protection. The giant phantom smashed down with its fist. The radiant protection fiercely trembled. Cracks quietly appeared on its surface, spreading outwards. Dorelice's 12 wings gently trembled as if she were withstanding a tremendous pressure. But her eyes remained calm, just a bit more dignified than before. She seemed to have underestimated the strength within this little fellow's body. Although this strength didn't belong to him, he could still rely on his body to erupt with such a formidable might. Besides his ability to perceive the path of time, was his bloodline also so formidable? If so, then he really was an enviable young boy. The giant phantom dissipated. Every inch of the radiant protection that was covered in cracks still managed to persist. In truth, this was within Qinyu's expectations. After all, the source of the radiant protection was the Tao monarch. As long as he didn't die, the radiant protection wouldn't shatter unless he instantly withstood an attack that surpassed the Tao monarch's strength. As Qinyu looked at the summoned Dorlice, his eyebrows furrowed imperceptibly. It seemed as if Dorlice had barely managed to withstand that strike just now, but he could faintly feel that this woman had held back a great deal of her strength. She could erupt with an even greater strength. Why did he have to hide his strength? The Tao monarch's emissary was an absolute mortal enemy of the ancient. Perhaps he was preparing to deal a fatal blow at a critical moment, or perhaps he had other plans in mind. Qinyu remained vigilant. After Dorlice attacked, a puppet appeared in his line of sight. Its body was covered with scars, and its chest was even cut open by a sharp weapon, revealing the dark, golden material within. The puppet's body was not protected by any energy, so it was directly exposed to the turbulent flow of space. No matter how much the violent spatial energy raged, it was unable to leave a single mark on its body. Qinyu sensed a familiar aura from this puppet. It was the aura of the Dark Parliament. He had come into contact with Philosopher, Jasmine Moonshadow, and that paranoid woman called Oriole. Sure enough, the Dark Parliament was going all out. This puppet required several counselors to work together to activate, so it should be their greatest trump card. Cheen, you could indeed sense a powerful threat from it. The Black Wolf, the spear-wielding youth from the northern border, the Western Tomb's chief seat of judgment, as well as the projection of the Tao Monarch's emissary Dorlease that he summoned, and now this terrifying puppet was added to the mix. Wasn't the ancient afraid that things would go too far and cause him to die here? My lord, we meet again. Philosopher's voice sounded out from the puppet's mouth. Cheen, you remained expressionless. Are you trying to persuade me to resign myself to death? The puppet shook its head. Of course not. With my lord's strength, even if all sides gather here today, being able to barely kill you is already the best possible result. In fact, I even worry that if you escape, we will be met with a calamity in the future. After a brief pause, it continued to say, So, I ask that you must die here today. Cheen, you lightly said, That depends on whether or not you can do it. The puppet didn't speak again. Its feet moved, and it instantly rushed forwards. Because it was too fast, it left behind a series of afterimages. Wherever it went, the turbulent space would be torn apart and pierced through, forming a straight channel that led straight towards Cheen Yu. A black fist smashed towards Cheen Yu's face. Before it arrived, the turbulent space behind it had already collapsed. Cheen Yu instantly attacked. His flesh and blood body collided with the puppet. There was a series of explosive sounds as both sides exchanged countless punches in a single breath of time. With a loud bang, the two sides instantly separated. There were several shallow fist marks on the puppet's chest, and Cheen Yu's face was a bit pale. The puppet didn't attack again. Its gray eyes that were filled with deathly stillness locked onto Cheen Yu. You are truly worthy of being the legendary Dragon City Master. The tyrannical degree of your mortal body is astonishing. Even after being weakened and suppressed multiple times, you still haven't fallen into a disadvantage. Cheen Yu said in a low voice, Since you speak so calmly, you must have a backup plan. Is it the Dark Parliament's hidden strength, or is it someone else? The puppet bowed. This is the strongest strength that the Dark Parliament can bring out. But it clearly isn't enough to kill you. It turned and looked deep into the turbulent space. With the situation having reached this step, are you still not prepared to make a move? Moo! With a deep roar from deep within the turbulent space, a monster beast with the head of a cow, the body of a fish, the claws of a dragon, and the tail of a scorpion appeared. Its scales emitted a faint light as it swam through the turbulent space, as if it were swimming in water. The monster beast's giant eyes were filled with fear. It was clear that although it had the talent to pass through the turbulent space, coming here wasn't its original intention. On the back of the demonic beast stood a beautiful woman. She was about 20 years old and wore a plain cotton dress. It was dusty and unremarkable, but it was incomparably smooth on her body. Instead, it accentuated her extraordinary temperament. At this time, the woman's eyes fell on Cheen Yu. There was a complex look in the depths of her eyes, as if there were tens of thousands of words she couldn't say. Taking a deep breath, the woman lowered her head and patted the monster beast's head. She said in a soft voice, This place is dangerous. Hurry and leave. With a step, the monster beast flew down from its back. With a deep roar of gratitude, it turned and left, soon disappearing from sight. What nonsense! If it didn't run away now, did it want to stay here and wait for death? Any one of the cultivators here could easily kill it. Even if it had the talent to pass through space, it still wouldn't be able to escape. This was because these people were all ruthless characters that could cross the turbulent space, and their cultivations were transcendent. After the monster beast left, the turbulent space fell into a brief silence. Everyone looked at the woman, as if they all knew who she was. These gazes more or less revealed anticipation. Thus, Qin Yu came to the conclusion that this woman was the strongest enemy he needed to face today. But the development of events surpassed Qin Yu's expectations. This woman that everyone was filled with anticipation actually slowly knelt down, her expression respectful. Sunset greets master. The black wolf bared his teeth. The heavenly wolf phantom behind him roared. Just what was this silly woman doing? Did she think that the person in front of her was the same master that had been gentle and kind to her in the past? Sunset, since you have done what you did in the past, there is no turning back. Don't delay any longer, lest something unexpected happen. Sunset didn't even glance at the black wolf. She maintained her kneeling posture and respectfully said, "In the past, I had my own difficulties that forced me to rebel. Now, there is no need to argue about who was right and who was wrong. But I still regard you as my only master. I once fantasized that master could return from the dead, but you once mentioned how difficult this would be, so I didn't have too much hope for it. I never thought that the heavens would take pity on you and actually allow you to resurrect. As long as you agree to abandon your cultivation, I will bring you away from here today and serve you for the rest of your life. I hope that master can seriously consider my proposal. I do not wish to kill you a second time, because that would be a great pain to me." Qin Yu's lips twitched. He never thought that he would be robbed and killed, but he would also have to face such a melodramatic play. Listening to this woman's words, it seemed that she still had feelings for the ancient. "Qin, you didn't know how to deal with this matter. After all, it involved the ancient's consciousness, so it wasn't good to say too much or too little." Thus, he chose to remain silent, and this silence in Sunset's eyes clearly indicated his attitude. A look of sorrow immediately appeared on her beautiful face. "Master, you aren't even willing to say a single word to me?" Tears flowed down her cheeks. This wasn't an act. Everyone could clearly feel her sorrow from the inside out. While they despised this woman's brain for being broken, they also secretly rejoiced that the Dragon City Master had directly refused. Otherwise, even if he had to abandon his cultivation, they still wouldn't have dared to let him leave. After all, even if his body and soul were destroyed, they still couldn't stop the Dragon City Master from resurrecting. Sunset stood up. Her eyes were still hazy with tears, but her expression gradually revealed a firm determination. "Master, since you have already made your choice, then allow me to personally send you on your way." She paused for a moment and then continued to say, "After you die, I will choose to commit suicide and accompany you in the underworld. This is my promise to you." She lifted a hand. Light surged between her fingers, and a fishing rod appeared. It looked very ordinary, but because it had been used too many times, there was a layer of glossy paste on its surface. Her slender and fair fingers clenched together. Tiny blue veins bulged out, indicating that her inner emotions were far from being as calm as she appeared. She lifted her hand, and the fishing hook held out. But there was no great river here, so where would the hook fall? Her eyes involuntarily followed it. She watched as the hook fell into the turbulent flows of space and disappeared. Qin Yu didn't know what she was doing, but he could faintly sense the excited emotions of the Dark Parliament's puppets and the others. His intuition told him that it was best to immediately break free from his imprisonment. Otherwise, even if he borrowed the strength of the ancient's consciousness, there was a chance he would be killed here. But the surrounding assassins were already prepared. They erupted with their strongest strength, desperately blocking Qin Yu's counterattack. Chapter 786. Twilight froze. She slowly turned to look at Qin Yu, hoping to see a change in his expression. But in the end, nothing happened. However, this was the true master in her heart. He was an indomitable spirit who possessed the strength to look down on the heavens, and no pressure could make him bow his head. If her master had endured humiliation to survive, then perhaps she would have been truly disappointed. She really was a contradictory woman. No wonder no matter how hard she tried in the past, she couldn't obtain her master's attention. Luckily, she would soon follow her master and die, so there would be no need to continue this contradiction. She pulled hard. The fishing rod bent under the force, and the ringing of the bell became even more intense. The fishing line hummed and trembled, emitting a faint and rapid sound. Twilight muttered, "It looks like my luck isn't bad this time. I managed to fish up a fierce fellow. Now come out." Bang! The turbulent space currents shattered. Through the tumbling fragments, one could see the black hole below. The fishing hook was rapidly retracting from it, and at the end of the hook there was a broken saber stuck to it. The surface was covered in rust, as if it had been buried in a dark and damp place for many years. The fishing hook was straight without any possibility of being hooked, but the broken saber was tightly stuck to it, as if it were attracted by a giant magnet. Twilight frowned as her eyes fell on the broken saber. Then she composed herself and turned to look at the crowd. "You are all well aware of my abilities. I have already done what I can. As for whether or not you can kill my master, that will depend on your own strength." She put away the fishing rod. The broken saber floated in the turbulent space currents, not leaking out the least bit of its aura. It was simply shabby to the extreme. But at this time, everyone looked at this broken saber with dignified expressions, regardless of whether or not they could see through the depths of this broken saber. Twilight's supernatural ability to fish up the heavens had never been wrong. Since she had fished up this broken saber today, it proved that it possessed the strength to truly kill the Dragon City Master. No one dared to underestimate it. The giant black wolf that maintained the heavenly wolf phantom and restrained Chi Ning's soul hesitated for a moment. Then a cruel light flashed in its eyes. "I'll do it." For hundreds of thousands of years, the fear of its master had remained in its heart. The passage of time hadn't been able to wash away this fear. Instead, it had become even deeper, shrouding its mind and blocking out all light and warmth. The black wolf was well aware that it was because of this fear that it hadn't been able to heal its wounds even after hundreds of thousands of years. Even its cultivation hadn't improved at all. If it couldn't break through this fear, it would forever remain like this. And without a doubt, the best solution was to personally kill its master. If it could do so, it would be able to break through this demon. Therefore, after a brief moment of hesitation, Black Wolf chose to attack. The silhouette of the celestial wolf remained unchanged as it walked toward the floating broken blade. A dense demonic light flashed, and the black wolf disappeared. A one-eyed man appeared in front of them. There was a hideous scar on his head, and there was no hair around it. Looking at the scar, one could vaguely see the white skull. The black wolf took during his body and his head he untook. He black. He. The process of picking up the saber was a test for Black Wolf. He was not sure if he had the courage to kill his master. Heaven, he at, as the end, he at him, he and he on he. As long as he could kill him, everything would come to an end and he would be able to welcome a new life. Lifting the broken saber, Black Wolf's heart filled with killing intent. This killing intent seemed to activate the rusted broken saber. The blade trembled and then completely erupted. Bang! A scarlet mist mixed with rust gushed out. When it gathered together, it looked like a giant furry fox's tail. This tail took root in the broken saber and wildly danced in the turbulent space. Everyone's noses and mouths were flooded with the smell of blood. With just a single breath, they could hear countless mournful wails. These sounds were the miserable screams of countless lives fused together, reaching deep into the soul and giving rise to an endless chill. Almost everyone felt their hairs stand on end. As they looked at the broken saber, they subconsciously revealed shock and fear. Such a thick, killing intent was able to affect their minds. Just how many lives did it take to condense it? Thinking about it, it must be an astronomical number. Without giving everyone more time to be shocked, Black Wolf, who was holding the broken saber, suddenly screamed out in pain. Red lines grew out from the saber hilt, like fine roots that drilled into his hand. At this time, these red lines constantly expanded and contracted, emitting gudong 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 sounds. It was like someone that had been starving for a long time was eating and drinking in great gulps. This broken saber was currently stealing Black Wolf's strength. Moreover, it seemed that Black Wolf didn't have the ability to resist at all. If he wasn't interrupted, it was foreseeable that Black Wolf would soon be sucked dry. For a time, everyone rejoiced that they hadn't done anything just now. Otherwise, the ones to have their strength stolen would have been them. They didn't have any friendship with Black Wolf, and if the situation were different, they would be more than happy to watch him be killed and then skin him alive to collect materials. After all, for a monster beast on the level of Black Wolf, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that its entire body was a treasure. If it was refined, it could become all sorts of powerful treasures. But not today. Although the Dragon City Master was still in a suppressed state, no one dared to say that without Black Wolf's restriction, he wouldn't be able to escape. No one dared to take such a risk. The Chief Monk of Judgment was the first to make a move. If there was a ranking of those who wanted to kill Dragon City Master the most, he was definitely a strong contender. He raised his hand and a white, holy light bloomed, blasting straight at the broken saber. Against the violent and destructive power of killing, the holy light naturally had a suppressive attribute. As expected, when the holy light fell, the terrifying aura released by the broken saber stopped for a moment. Black Wolf frantically erupted his strength, trying to take the opportunity to break free from the broken saber. Unfortunately, this pause only lasted for a very short time. Then Black Wolf's screams were a few levels higher than before, and his body violently twitched. Those red lines that drilled into his body crazily invaded the depths of his flesh and blood. At the same time, the holy light entwined on the surface of the broken saber was rapidly reduced, and it was being rapidly devoured by the broken saber. The Chief Monk of Judgment's expression changed, because in the void in front of him, a large number of red lines drilled out and directly pounced on him. These red lines were exactly the same as those that drilled into Black Wolf's body. It could actually trace the source of the power and directly attack. Holy light suddenly erupted, but these red lines weren't affected at all. They pierced through like phantoms, falling into the Chief Monk of Judgment's hand and rapidly drilling into his flesh and blood. Dorlice moved. Her palm fell on the Chief Monk of Judgment's back, and the red lines that drilled into his body screamed and quickly retreated. One could clearly see that on the surface of the brightly colored red lines, there were burn marks. "Thank you for your help." The Chief Monk of Judgment respectfully bowed, his face pale with fear. Although he was a fanatic believer, he was also a normal cultivator. After experiencing what just happened, he would naturally feel fear. In particular, the red lines had already drilled into his body. The Chief Monk of Judgment could feel the pain that Black Wolf was suffering. Even if it was less than a tenth of Black Wolf's pain, it was enough to make him feel as if his heart had fallen into an icy lake. He looked at Black Wolf with pity in his eyes. Dorlice had a dignified expression. Although her attack just now seemed simple, it had consumed nearly half of the projection strength. Even so, she could only expel the red lines. She couldn't even cause any substantial damage to them. The origin of this broken saber was likely greater than she imagined. Its master was absolutely a transcendent existence, no weaker than a Tao monarch. But since this broken saber was fished up by sunset shadow, that meant that its master had already perished such an existence. Although seemingly immortal, would still die, this caused a hope in Dorlice's heart to brighten. Of course, she had to hide this hope. Before she achieved it, she absolutely couldn't let anyone know of it. The turbulent space fell into a brief silence. Even the western tombs, holy light had been swallowed up. If they were in her place, they feared they would suffer the same fate. They might even be chased down by the red lines. Without the help of a spiritual god's projection, it was likely they would die. Perhaps this was fate. Black Wolf was doomed to die today. In the silence, the puppet suddenly said, "Let's give it a try." Sage's voice was calm. It had clearly obtained the approval of the other counselors. No one objected. It rushed through the turbulent space and arrived beside Black Wolf. As if sensing an aura approaching, the humming of the broken saber suddenly rose up. Schwa. Massive red lines drilled out, instantly wrapping around the puppet. They crazily drilled in, wanting to find a channel to invade the inside. But unfortunately, no matter how hard the red lines tried, they couldn't find a single flaw in the puppet. Although it was covered in scars as if it had experienced countless battles, it was still an independent entity, completely isolated from the outside world. The puppet reached out a hand and grabbed the back of the broken saber. Because of the rust, Sage could clearly feel the roughness of the puppet's palm. It was clearly an ordinary feeling. But at this moment, all 6 counselors, including Sage, simultaneously felt an extremely terrifying aura. It was like they were standing at the edge of an abyss, able to fall in at any moment and die a horrible death. The 6 counselors believed without hesitation that if it weren't for the puppet isolating them, they would have died the moment they touched the back of the saber. Just what sort of saber was this? Even after being cut in half, it still possessed such terrifying might. Taking a deep breath, Sage steadied his mind. His consciousness controlled the puppet to slowly pull out the broken saber from Black Wolf's twitching hand. The moment the saber left Black Wolf's palm, all the blood-red lines rapidly retracted. Black Wolf had a look of panic as he turned and fled. In just a short period of time, he had become much thinner, almost as if he were a bag of bones. At this moment, no one laughed at his cowardice or fear, because if it were anyone else, they would have suffered the same fate. In the face of death, all life was equal. The more powerful an existence was, the more they feared death. Luckily, they had the Dark Parliament's puppet. Otherwise, even if they obtained this killing saber, they would still be helpless against it. Grasping the broken saber, countless red lines wrapped around the puppet's body, making it so that not even a drop of water could be seen. After a long time, the broken saber emitted a low hum and all the red lines retreated. The terrifying fog that resembled a giant fox tail also dissipated. The puppet casually moved a few times. The broken saber cut through the void. Even in the turbulent space flows, it was still able to cut out black marks. The turbulent space flows were already deep within the barriers of the world itself. If the void here was cut apart, one would step out of this world and into the true void. Just a casual swing of the saber without pouring any strength into it actually had such might. Everyone's eyes brightened, including the still terrified Black Wolf. They could already see the scene of the Dragon City, Master being dismembered by this broken saber. Chapter 787. The moment the puppet picked up the broken saber, Chinyu felt his heart turn cold. He felt as if he had fallen into an icy lake and his blood was about to freeze. This saber could kill him. There was no reason for this, but Chinyu had never doubted his own intuition. When the puppet turned around and looked at him, the chill reached its peak. You could hear the sound of his soul shivering. Schwa, the broken saber cut down. There were no fluctuations of aura at all. Yu's pupils shrank, but before he could erupt with any strength to resist, his mind buzzed and he became a simple spectator. There was an accident. Leave the rest to me for now. Don't worry, you won't die. The ancient's voice was light. In the next moment, everyone sensed a change in Yu's aura. No, it was more accurate to say that an invisible potential had appeared on his body. This was the temperament of someone who had stepped onto the peak, someone who could decide the life or death of 1,000,000,000,000 lives with a single thought. Wherever his eyes looked, everything would crawl beneath his feet. Anyone who dared to resist would die. Twilight fiercely looked up at Chinyu. At this moment, her eyes were in a trance, as if she were looking at her master from the past. The saber light erupted. As if it were stimulated by something, it appeared invisibly. Feeling the horrifying strength contained within the saber light, Twilight's heart shook. She cried out no. But it was clear that it was too late. She could only stretch out her hand and helplessly watch as the saber light cut down. Fishing for the heavens was an ability she was born with. Although she hadn't personally touched the broken saber, she could faintly feel the annihilation attribute it contained. With her master's current level of strength, it was absolutely impossible for him to resist it. Qin Yu looked at Twilight, his eyes indifferent. Then he lifted a hand and punched out. As this fist fell, the shivering black wolf cried out miserably. Its body was sent flying away, and the heavenly wolf phantom dissipated. The complexion of the youth from the northern wilderness changed. The spear in his hand violently hummed, and a formidable strength tore open his palm, causing blood to wildly flow out. He exhausted all his strength and heard the clear sound of his finger bones breaking. Although he didn't let go of the spear, he was still sent tumbling into the turbulent space like the black wolf. The black shadow that covered everything suddenly exploded from the middle. An extremely berserk energy erupted, tearing open many cracks. The divine priest of judgment's expression changed. He raised his hands, and holy light surged, quickly wrapping around his body. Dorlee stood behind him and shouted out loud, "Protection of light!" She didn't expect that she would be forced to use light protection twice in such a short period of time. The power that this projection could mobilize was simply too weak. More importantly, the person before her was far more powerful than she had imagined. As expected of an existence that could fight against a Tao monarch in the past, even though he was defeated, he still managed to severely injure a Tao monarch. If not for that, the Tao Lord wouldn't have met with such an accident and ended up in a state where he could only hibernate. Dong, the protection of light, was covered in cracks, but managed to withstand it once more. The Judgment Divine Seat and Dorlease drew backwards. Although they also crashed into the turbulent space flows, they were much more relaxed than the Black Wolf and the others. Of course, there was a price to pay. Dorlease bitterly smiled. The strength of her projection was nearly exhausted. She no longer had a chance to attack, otherwise she would simply dissipate. This little bit of time was way too different from what he had initially thought. It wasn't enough at all. Twilight spat out a mouthful of blood. She didn't resist at all and allowed the fist to send her flying away. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and tranquility. To die like this and follow her master to the Yellow Springs, this might be the best ending for her. With just a single punch, it was as if everyone had withstood a frontal attack. Besides the dark Parliament puppet that held the broken saber, all the other assassins were forced back. Even though it was the same strength, the difference in strength between Qin Yu's hands and the ancient's control was like the heavens and earth. And at this time, the strength of this punch didn't diminish at all. It collided with the saber light. With a stuffy cough, Qin Yu paled. A line of blood appeared between his eyebrows and passed through his nose. He spat out a mouthful of blood and borrowed the momentum to draw backwards. He rushed into the turbulent space flows and rapidly fled. "Chase! We cannot let the Dragon City Master escape. He's injured. As long as he slashes out with another saber strike, the Dragon City Master will die without a doubt. Hurry and run. He's fast at escaping." With loud roars, the assassins rushed forwards. With the dark Parliament puppet in the lead, they chased after the direction that Qin Yu had fled in. Twilight was stunned. She never thought that her master would try to escape. Surprise flashed in her eyes. She pursed her lips and followed behind. Although the ancient had lost control of his body, as if to reassure Qin Yu, he could still clearly feel every change in his body. Thus, Qin Yu was well aware that in that collision, the ancient had only lost a bit of his strength and hadn't been truly injured. If so, then he clearly had another goal in running away. Just what did he want to do? As Qin Yu was thinking, The speed at which he passed through the turbulent flows of space and time suddenly slowed down. This change didn't escape the eyes of the assassins behind him. Their faces lit up with joy, as they thought the Dragon City Master had used some sort of arcane technique to erupt with strength, so it was impossible for him to continue for too long. Moreover, after using this sort of arcane technique, there would be a period of weakness. In other words, without accident, the Dragon City Master's speed would continue to slow down. In fact, everything was just as they thought. As they felt the distance between the two sides constantly shorten, everyone became increasingly excited to be able to chase down the legendary Dragon City Master who had suppressed the entire dragon race and ruled over the entire world. This sort of feeling was incomparably wonderful. And what was even more wonderful was that this peerless powerhouse that had once dominated the world would soon perish under their hands. The Black Wolf gasped for breath, a burning pain burning in his chest. After being plundered by the broken saber, he had already suffered severe injuries. Continuing to fly forwards at high speeds was extremely difficult, and it even caused his internal injuries to worsen. But at this moment he didn't feel any pain in his body at all. His eyes were incomparably bright, and there was only a single thought in his mind: kill him! Suddenly, the aura of the Dragon City Master vanished. The assassins weren't startled or angry, but rather overjoyed. He couldn't last much longer. They soon arrived at the place where the Dragon City Master's aura had vanished. Before the shaking, turbulent flows of space had fully recovered, the puppet lifted a hand and slashed out. The turbulent flows were split apart, revealing a channel that connected to the outside world. Shwa! Everyone howled as they flew out. In front of them was a massive plain, barren and overgrown. There were only a few weeds that weakly grew, exposing large tracts of red soil basin, an incomparably barren region. It was located to the north of the eastern plains, not too far away from the western tomb. Everyone swept out with their divine senses to determine the location. Then their eyes gathered on the deathly pale Chinyu, with blood dripping from the corners of his lips. Feeling the violent fluctuations of his aura, they could see that he was on the verge of collapse. But no one dared to doubt that the Dragon City Master had the ability to drag others down with him. With the light of victory in sight, no one was willing to fall down at this moment. In the silence, the Dark Parliament's leader lifted his hand, the broken saber locking onto Chinyu. Shwa! Without pause, the saber light cut through space. The skies and earth split apart, forming two straight cracks. With a loud rumble, a terrifying aura descended. Chinyu lifted his arms, and the phantom of a mountain appeared in front of him. As this stunning saber cut down, the mountain phantom violently shook, causing massive ripples to appear. Chinyu staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood. After blocking this saber strike, the mountain phantom rapidly stabilized. The Black Wolf said in a low voice, "I know of this technique. It is the Dragon City Master's most formidable defensive method. Unless a strength instantly erupts that surpasses the limits of what it can withstand, there is no way to break through it." He looked at the puppet. "Fellow senators, please stimulate the puppet's strength with all your strength. We cannot delay any longer. No one knows what will happen in the next second." In the past, when the Dragon City Master was killed, his rule rapidly collapsed. But there was still a portion of forces that were loyal to him. After being suppressed by all sides, they gradually disappeared. But they still existed and were active in the shadows, constantly thinking of reviving the Dragon City Master. News of what happened in Dragon City had already spread out, and these people were bound to know of it. If they interfered, there was a high chance of some accident occurring. Of course, no one would allow that. This time, the Dark Parliament has played a great role in killing the Dragon City Master. The northern frontier will send a token of our sincerity afterwards. The Western Tomb Divine Church owes the Dark Parliament a favor. In the future, we can ask the Divine Church to do something for us. A deep and low voice echoed out from the giant's shadow. Today, the contributions of all senators will be repaid. The puppet was silent for a short period of time. Then the sage's voice sounded out. Senator Morningstar of the Dark Parliament will be absent from today's matter. So, if we wish to activate the puppet's full strength, I and the other 5 senators will have to withstand a great deal of pressure. I hope that everyone can remember what you have just said and not go back on your word in the future. As the voice fell, the puppet's body began to change. Dark golden runes appeared, weaving together into mysterious lines that spread down from the top of the puppet's head until they covered every inch of its body. Its gray and desolate eyes were now a bit grayish-white, like withered grass that had been frozen to death by frost. Just by looking at it, one could feel its annihilating death intent. The puppet didn't speak again. It slowly raised its broken saber. This simple movement seemed to exhaust all of its strength. Then the broken saber came slashing down. Qin Yu's consciousness instantly blanked out. At this moment, he felt as if he would die before the saber even reached him. However, this blankness only lasted for a short period of time. Qin Yu suddenly woke up, and the ancient's voice echoed in his ears. Now? What now? What was he waiting for? Qin Yu subconsciously wondered. But before he could think more about it, a heaven-shaking explosion erupted. He could only watch helplessly as his body spat out blood and his consciousness didn't feel anything at all. A strange feeling rose in his heart. This time, Qin Yu could clearly feel that the ancient's consciousness had been injured. It was different from its previous disguise. Its aura had become weak. But Qin Yu didn't feel any panic from the ancient's consciousness. Rather, there was a faint excitement. Just what was he doing? In the red soil basin, terrifying strengths collided. It was like a nuclear explosion. A giant mushroom cloud soared into the sky. Then the earth was easily torn apart like paper. Space was torn apart, and the horrifying strength continued to wreak havoc as it swept through an increasingly large area. Qin Yu stopped and looked up. In the next moment, a relieved smile lit up his face. It had finally opened. Schwa, without any hesitation, his figure held out. Like a meteor, he rushed into the shattered space without hesitation. There, a faintly discernible stone door appeared. Its surface was mottled and it emitted an extremely rich aura, as if it had existed in this world for endless years. At this time, the stone door opened a crack and a faint aura spread out. The Black Wolf and Twilight both trembled and instinctively revealed fear in their eyes. The Black Wolf screamed, "It's the body of the Dragon City Master! We've been fooled! He is borrowing the strength of the broken saber to open the entrance." Chapter 788. In the back, Sunset's eyes flashed with relief. Indeed, this was her master's style of doing things. How could someone as proud and powerful as him be chased down by these people? Looking at the panic-stricken assassins in front of her, she revealed a mocking smile. Once her master obtained the strength from the ruined body, none of these people would be able to escape. Of course, Sunset didn't forget that this also included herself. But to Sunset, she had already done her best. Since she couldn't kill her master, dying under his hands was a matter of course. Go, stop the Dragon City Master. No matter the price, we cannot let him obtain the ruined body. Kill him. With a deep roar, the puppet was the first to rush into the collapsing space. By relying on its tyrannical body, it smashed open a straight channel. The Black Wolf dragged its weak body and clenched its teeth as it followed behind. It was well aware of its master's temperament. If he were to restore his strength, it would surely meet its doom. The spear-wielding youth from the northern frontier had a solemn expression. This time, there was no way to retreat. If they couldn't kill the Dragon City Master, their entire tribe would be slaughtered. As he thought of his daughter who had just been born and could barely walk, he gripped his spear and his expression became even more firm. The shadow that blotted out the skies shrank to just over 10 feet in size. The darkness was so deep that it was nearly solid. Within the tumbling darkness, one could faintly make out a face. The Western Tomb Chief, Judge, had a calm expression. As the Tao Monarch's most devout believer, he was willing to give up his life to protect the Tao Monarch. "Your Excellency, let's go in." Dorlice slowly nodded. Passing through the shattered space, they arrived in front of the stone door that was slightly open. The inside seemed to be shrouded in fog, making it impossible to see clearly. Sunset was the last to step in. As she did, it was like passing through a layer of flames. She could clearly feel the scorching heat from the raging flames. In the next moment, surging waves of heat rushed towards her. Dry air was sucked into her body, rubbing against her windpipe and emitting crackling sounds. As far as the eye could see, yellow sand stretched into the skies. The great sun hung low in the skies, recklessly sprinkling down light and heat. Because of the rising heat, the air was distorted, causing the scene in the distance to blur. Perhaps this was the reason why it was impossible to see what was happening inside from outside the stone door. Of course, this was a world of sand. Even if one couldn't see into the distance, it didn't matter. This was because no matter which direction one went in, it was almost the same. Sunset subconsciously pursed her lips. Then she suddenly paused. Even with her cultivation, she actually felt a little thirsty. She raised her head to look at the sun that was pressed down so low that it seemed especially massive. Sunset narrowed her eyes, paused for a moment, and then looked around. Sure enough, they had already sensed that something was wrong, and all of them revealed gloomy expressions. The Black Wolf roared out, "Sunset, you should have a way to lock onto the Dragon City Master's aura and immediately find him." Schwa, all eyes gathered on him. Sunset shook her head. "I've already taken action once. Not being able to kill Master is your problem. I won't do anything else." "You—" Black Wolf was enraged, his face flustered and exasperated. "Sunset, don't forget that you are on the same boat as us. If the Dragon City Master recovers his strength, none of us will be able to escape." "Then don't run," Sunset said slowly. "As far as I'm concerned, killing Master once is already my limit. If you're unhappy, feel free to attack me. Of course, I'll fight back, because only my master has the right to take my life." Black Robe roared, "You've gone mad." Sunset didn't speak again. Her eyes drooped, her expression indifferent. Everyone could clearly feel the firmness in her heart. Their complexions paled and a dangerous aura tumbled around them. The puppet lifted a hand. "Don't delay. Every second that passes means we are in more danger." He looked at Dorlice. "Honorable Tao Monarch Emissary, I wonder if you have a way to help us lock onto the Dragon City Master's aura?" Dorlice nodded. "I can do it, but you should be able to feel that the strength in my projection has been completely exhausted." The Judgment Divine seat bowed. "Emissary, I am willing to offer my strength to you." "Then there's no problem." Dorlice lifted a hand and placed it on his shoulder. The Judgment Divine seat stuffily coughed, and his complexion rapidly paled. A mass of holy light appeared in Dorlice's hand. It rapidly elongated, turning into the shape of an arrow that pointed in a certain direction. "Here." The puppet stepped forwards, and yellow sand exploded outwards. Its body turned into a phantom that raced towards the direction the arrow pointed at. Whoosh, whoosh, many assassins followed behind. The Judgment Divine seat took a deep breath. His body wavered. He didn't think that a simple locking technique would consume so much energy. Dorlice said, "In your current state, it isn't suitable for you to rush over. Rest here for now. Once you recover a bit, you can come and find me based on my aura." The Judgment Divine seat nodded. "That's all I can do. I will leave everything else to Emissary. Please be sure to kill the Dragon City Master." "All right." With a nod, Dorlice stepped forwards. Her graceful figure quickly vanished into the distance. Twilight looked at her departing back, and then at the Judgment Divine seat, who was sitting down cross-legged, preparing to recover his energy. Without a word, she followed. Dorlice turned her head, and their eyes met. She smiled and said, "You seem to be very conflicted." Twilight asked, "Then what about you?" "I am very curious. Why did you help my master? Did you deliberately use the locking technique?" "Pah! Pah!" Dorlice clapped her hands. "You really are smart. But don't you understand that the more you know, the more dangerous it is?" Twilight shook her head. "You cannot kill me." Her tone was calm. "Then let us join forces." Dorlice revealed a bright smile. "You have already helped once and fulfilled your promise. So, what you hope for now is for the Dragon City Master to survive." What a coincidence! Although I am the Tao Monarch's emissary because of certain reasons, I also hope that he can survive. Twilight looked deeply at her. "You had best not lie to me." "Of course." Dorlice brightly smiled. How could one of the Tao Monarch's most formidable enemies quietly perish here? It had to be known that she was a person with lofty ideals. And when it came to ideals, it was always better to work hard several times. What if her luck was good and she succeeded? The great sun, yellow sand, high temperatures. These were the only rhythms in this space. As far as the eye could see, it was empty and deathly silent, without the slightest bit of life. The black-robed Chinyu walked forwards in silence, leaving behind deep footprints wherever he went. No matter how hot the winds howled and stirred up massive amounts of sand, these footprints weren't covered at all. It was as if they were forever embedded in the desert. After an unknown period of time, this arduous trek came to an end. Chinyu looked up ahead, revealing his cracked lips covered by his black robes. He licked the corners of his lips and said in a soft voice, "Found you!" He lifted a foot and stepped forwards. A formidable strength smashed into the desert. 1,000,000,000,000 grains of sand instantly fell into a berserk state, stirring up monstrous waves of sand. With his foot as the center, it rose up in all directions. With a loud rumble, an earth-shaking roar filled the air. As the sand rolled, a palace hidden deep in the desert slowly emerged. It wasn't too large and could be completely covered at a glance. But no matter how one looked, even between the tiles, they couldn't find a single crack. It was as if this underground palace had been directly hollowed out and refined from a single piece of stone. Chinyu stepped forwards and landed at the entrance of the hall. Then he suddenly frowned and looked in a certain direction. There was a cultivator lying on the ground. His eyes were filled with despair. His final movements were frozen in the moment he grasped outwards. After thinking for a moment, Chinyu stepped forwards. His footsteps stirred up a gentle breeze that brushed against the cultivator's body. The cultivator's lifelike, mortal body immediately turned into powder that fell to the ground. Chinyu wasn't surprised by this. He had already sensed that this person was a corpse to begin with. It was just that his body emitted an aura that Chinyu was interested in, thus he approached. With a flick of his sleeves, the corpse that had turned to powder was sent flying away. A sparkling and translucent black crystal appeared in front of him. Chinyu looked at it several times and revealed a smile. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards, causing the crystal to fall into his palm. As it touched his flesh and blood, the black crystal fused in and then appeared in Chinyu's soul space. Can you feel it? This is a very interesting thing. After fusing with it, it can increase your strength and also help you avoid some troubles. Chin, you didn't think he would obtain this thing. When the crystal fused into his body, he received a massive amount of information. There were many bits and pieces, but the summary was simple. From today onwards, he was one of the 7 senators of the Dark Parliament, Senator Morningstar. This corpse was the previous Morningstar who had disappeared for a long time and no one had been able to find him. It was clear that he had died in this space for some unknown reason, and the black crystal he left behind was the symbol of his status as a senator. Besides the status of the Western Tomb Saint son, he had also inexplicably gained the title of senator. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. If there were a few more, he would be able to play around with a different identity every day. In the desert world, several figures held forwards. Suddenly, the Dark Parliament's puppet came to a stop. It turned its head and looked in the opposite direction. The hearts of the 6 senators violently shook. The aura that suddenly appeared at this moment actually came from Senator Morningstar. How could he be here? Through the vague connection between the senators, an incomplete image appeared in front of them. It was like a palace buried deep in the desert. Sunset, you are lying. The Dragon City Master isn't in this direction at all. The puppet roared and turned to leave. The other robbers all revealed looks of shock and anger. As they looked at Sunset's calm appearance, they naturally understood what was going on. However, they couldn't figure out why the Dao Monarch's envoy hadn't seen through her deception during the entire process. The Black Wolf roared, "You stupid woman, if it weren't now, I would have killed you." This was the thought in the minds of almost all robbers. Whoosh, whoosh. Chapter 789. Deep within the desert world, several thick yurts were nailed deep into the yellow sand with long iron rods. Suddenly, the door of one of the yurts opened from the inside. As if to resist the scorching heat, a figure drilled out wearing a raincoat. He looked up to reveal an old face. His pitch-black face was covered in layers of wrinkles, each one filled with sand. But his eyes were particularly bright. Even if his lips were cracked and blood seeped out from them, it didn't affect him in the slightest. He looked up at the great sun that would never set. Then he took out a black bone and gently stroked it with his rough and withered fingers. A dim black light emitted from the surface of the bone. If one looked carefully, they would discover that this black light was actually composed of countless tiny runes. They slowly and mysteriously swam around the black bone, constantly combining and splitting apart as if they were deducing something. After a long time, the old man sighed. He turned his palm and put away the black bone. Just like before, his deductions were fruitless. They had already been in the desert world for a long time. Although the youths of his clan hadn't said anything, he knew that they were nearing their limits. It seemed that they would have to return without any results. Walala! With the sound of sand falling to the ground, another petite figure drilled out. She tightly wrapped herself in her raincoat and ran behind the old man. "Old ancestor, is there still no harvest?" Her voice was a bit hoarse, caused by a lack of water. Her delicate palm-sized face was filled with exhaustion. The old man turned around and said in a soft voice, "That's right." He lifted a hand and stroked the girl's head. A faint blue light flashed, and she immediately felt much better. The young girl took a step back. She coquettishly said, "Old ancestor, you've also consumed a great deal of your strength. There is no need to take care of me like this. I am strong and I'm fine." The old man had a gratified expression. "I know you are sensible, but the environment here is a bit too stressful for you. Go back and tell the little fellows that we won't be staying here for too long. We will leave in at most 72 hours. The young girl's eyes brightened. "Ah, that's great." She stuck out her tongue. "Old ancestor, it's not that I don't like it. It's just that this place is too dirty. I haven't taken a bath in a long time. When I leave, I will soak for 3 days and 3 nights. The old man smiled and shook his head. He was about to say something when his expression suddenly changed. He suddenly turned around and stared in a certain direction. He sensed the aura that had suddenly appeared, and after a brief moment of surprise, excitement appeared on his face. Taking a deep breath, the old man took out the black bone from before. Without needing to activate it, countless runes flowed on its surface. They quickly gathered together, forming a special diagram. Hundreds of thousands of years. Your aura has appeared. Finally, it has appeared again. The old man murmured. Ecstasy gushed out of his mind, causing his body to tremble slightly. The power in her body erupted uncontrollably, and a powerful aura burst out of her body. Fortunately, the old man reacted at the critical moment and only sent the girl flying, not causing any actual damage. The commotion alarmed the people in the yurts. In the blink of an eye, dozens of figures rushed out. When they realized that there was no danger, they heaved a sigh of relief and looked over in bewilderment. "Old Patriarch, what are you doing?" The old man raised the black bone in his hand and said in a loud voice, "I can sense Master's aura. He is in this space." "Ah!" After everyone exclaimed in surprise, their faces were filled with ecstasy. "Master has been resurrected. I knew it. With Master's strength, how could he have died so easily? What are you waiting for? Let's immediately go greet Master." The old patriarch was all smiles, but at this time the black bone runes in his hand rapidly disintegrated, forming several straight arrows. His complexion changed. "This is bad. Someone is tracking Master's aura. It's an enemy. You Yao, you little fellows stay here. Everyone else, come with me." Whoosh! The old patriarch shot into the skies. As they watched the masters of the clan howl away, the remaining dozen-some youths all revealed worried expressions. Yu Yao was the young girl from before. She turned and said, "Everyone, let's wait in the yurts. We won't be able to last too long outside." She turned her head and looked towards the place where the old ancestor and the others had vanished. The young girl bit her lips. She didn't know why, but she had a bad premonition in her heart. It was fine, it was definitely fine. With the old ancestor's cultivation, it was more than enough to defeat any enemy. In the palace that didn't have a single crack, the advancing Chinyu stopped. He turned his head and looked behind him, his eyes flashing. Then he looked away and continued to walk deeper into the palace. Chinyu didn't move too quickly. Every step he took caused ripples to appear on the mirror-like ground. These ripples spread outwards. When they struck the walls of the palace, they would be reflected back. Then they would collide with new ripples, causing even more changes in direction. Thus, as Chinyu continued to move forwards, the ripples beneath his feet became incomparably chaotic. It was like a roaring sea in a storm, each ripple like a raging wave. Chinyu walked between the waves. If he made a single mistake, he would be swallowed up by the waves. But his feet remained steady as he continued to move forwards at a steady speed. Every step he took was just right. Even when several ripples collided, they were still able to balance the strength of all sides and maintain a balance. After an unknown period of time, Chinyu finally stopped. The ripples on the ground behind him suddenly vanished, as if everything he had just seen had been an illusion. After passing through a long corridor, his line of sight suddenly widened. In the depths of the hall, there was a chair with a person sitting on it. His face was blurry and indistinct. Behind the tables on both sides, there were many figures. There were humans, beasts, and even winged beings. Although they were all stone sculptures, their carvings were exquisite and lifelike. They easily displayed the cheerful atmosphere of this banquet. Chinyu's eyes became deep and profound. His mind subconsciously flew away, searching for memories of this banquet in the past. Indeed, what he saw now was a frozen frame of one of those scenes. Unfortunately, most of the participants of this banquet had perished, and it was impossible for them to truly reappear. Chinyu shook his head and stepped into the hall. The moment he entered, behind the two closest tables, the stone sculptures shattered and fell off. "Who dares trespass into Dragon City? You are courting death." With a roar, the man and beast attacked at the same time. Brilliant light erupted and powerful fluctuations of strength covered Chinyu. He could even imitate their supernatural abilities. Chinyu calmly walked forwards as he thought this. Facing the attacks of these two people, he didn't respond at all. In the next moment, he stepped forwards. The man and beast that attacked him turned to powder. Then the other two stone sculptures behind the tables came back to life, repeating the same process. Among these figures was a powerful black wolf and a beautiful woman. Her name was Sunset Shadow. She stood in the deepest part of the hall, acting as a maid. So, after Sunset Shadow turned to powder, Chinyu stood in front of the main seat. His eyes crossed the long table and looked at the stone sculptures on the chairs. I never thought that when facing these subordinates of yours from the past, you would attack without hesitation, showing them no mercy at all. With a deep and low voice, massive cracks appeared on the surface of the last stone sculpture, revealing a figure that had fallen to the ground. He was a tall and imposing middle-aged man. He had a beard and a firm expression. As he opened and closed his eyes, he exuded a disdainful attitude. Just by sitting there and not doing anything else, he was like a mountain that suppressed the world, as if everything in the world would crawl beneath his feet. Qin Yu's gaze paused for a moment. He lightly said, "No one can stop my steps, not to mention that they are already dead. Even if they were alive and standing here, their fate would still be the same." "Pa, Pa," the man clapped his hands. "You are truly worthy of being the consciousness that once controlled my formidable main body. You are truly powerful to the extreme. If I can swallow you, my strength will definitely rise by a great deal. I might even be able to replace you and become the new Dragon City Master." Chinyu said, "I am indeed curious. Just what did the Tao Monarch do that gave you the confidence to face me?" The man smiled. "You will soon find out." He stood up and spread out his arms. "Then welcome to my world." Thump! A deep and heavy beating sound suddenly spread out from all directions. At this moment, the hall beneath their feet seemed to come alive. Then there was a second and third beat. Thump! Thump! This was the sound of a heartbeat. It became faster and faster, like the beating of a war drum, because what was imprisoned here was the ancient's heart. With the Dark Parliament's puppet in the lead, the robbers were forced to stop. In front of them was a group of cultivators wearing rush raincoats. The atmosphere was tense and hostile. The puppet spoke with a sage's voice. "Giant Spirit Clan." The old patriarch had a light expression. "I never thought that after so many years of not appearing, there would still be people who would know of us. What an honor." The Black Wolf roared, "Don't waste time with them. These people are dead loyal to the Dragon City Master. It is impossible to persuade them." The old patriarch's eyes were icy cold. "You traitor who betrayed Master in the past. Since we have met today, I will cut you down and take your head as a gift to Master." The Black Wolf revealed his true form. "Then let's see who dies first today." "Attack!" the puppet shouted out loud. It was highly likely that the Dragon City Master was searching for his broken body right now. Every second he delayed meant a higher chance of success. With a slash of his saber, the desert beneath his feet was split in half and a deep abyss appeared. The old patriarch took a deep breath. His thin chest puffed up and he roared out loud. Roar! With a series of crackling sounds, the old patriarch's body began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a breath of time, he reached nearly 1,000 feet. From an old and frail man, he had transformed into a giant. His muscles bulged and his blood vitality boiled. A wild aura was released, stirring up the spiritual strength of the world. With loud rumbles, it gathered from all directions, wrapping around his body and forming a vortex of spiritual strength visible to the naked eye. This was the main body of the giant spirit clan, as well as their innate ability to mobilize the spiritual strength of the world. Bang! The invisible saber cut down. The spiritual strength vortex was almost instantly cut apart. The old patriarch was expressionless. He lifted a hand and punched out. His flesh and blood body met the saber, and blood splashed out in all directions. The flesh and blood on his fist disintegrated, revealing the pale, white bones underneath. But he only frowned. In the next moment, his flesh and blood rapidly grew back, restoring him to his original state. The giant spirit clan had the bloodline of the ancient race flowing through their bodies, so they possessed formidable regenerative abilities. As long as their blood vitality wasn't exhausted, they could become nearly immortal. Kill them. Protect Master from being disturbed. Fight. With loud roars, the giant spirit clan members rushed out. The Black Wolf received extra attention. Although it had revealed its true form, it was still surrounded by 5 giant spirit clan members. It roared again and again, but couldn't take a single step forwards. The youth from the northern border raised his spear and thrust it out. A terrifying strength condensed into a single point, piercing through the chest of a giant spirit clan member. The black shadow that had shrunk into a ball dispersed, wrapping around its opponent. The angry roars of the giant spirit clan members echoed out from within, violently tumbling about. Wild fluctuations of strength swept out, stirring up trillions of yellow sand and forming a terrifying scene as if the heavens were collapsing. The palace buried deep in the desert constantly shrank and expanded, emitting dull, rumbling sounds. Thick lines appeared on its surface, crimson-red like meridians. These lines shrank and expanded as the palace shrank and expanded, constantly rising and falling, producing a formidable strength that rumbled towards the interior of the palace from every inch and corner. Qi Niu stood in the grand hall, his hands clasped behind his back. Blood energy erupted from his body, causing loud rumbling sounds to echo out as he blocked all of the bombardment of strength. Is this the trump card the Tao Monarch gave you? Of course not. The man's calm voice echoed out. Then I ask that you die here. Chapter 790. There were a few shallow fist marks on the puppet's body. Its deathly gray eyes stared at the giant spirit race clansman that had been sent flying away. It had a 70% chance of killing him with its next saber strike. But after a moment of thought, it sheathed its saber and left without hesitation. Today's crucial point wasn't this. So what if it killed all the giant spirit race clansmen? If the Dragon City Master successfully obtained the broken body, all of them would die here. The other assassins clearly understood this. They took advantage of the chaos to break free from the giant spirit race clansmen and followed the puppet away. Old Patriarch, are you all right? The giant spirit race clansmen gathered, anxious expressions on their faces. There was a terrifying saber wound on the old Patriarch's chest. His flesh was pale white, as if all his blood had been sucked away. He waved his hand and swept his eyes around. In that great battle just now, nearly half of the clan's masters had died. Even those that were still alive were mostly wounded. As they thought, wanting to stop these assassins with their strength was nearly impossible. But they had to do it because this was the mission of the giant spirit race and the only meaning of their existence. With a deep breath, the old patriarch lifted a hand and slapped his chest. His face paled for a moment before turning rosy in the next. The terrifying wound on his chest began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even his originally weak aura began to rapidly recover. Old Patriarch, you! The old patriarch raised a hand to interrupt him. Everything is for Master. Go! Bang! The yellow sand on the ground collapsed, and he shot into the skies. Whoosh! Whoosh! The remaining giant spirit race clansmen clenched their teeth and followed. Since they had broken free of the giant spirit race's obstruction, the assassins naturally wouldn't give them another chance to drag them into the melee. Both sides continued to exchange blows in the air. Even though there were some obstructions, their speed was still fast to the extreme. Finally, the palace buried deep beneath the yellow sand appeared in front of everyone. Feeling the terrifying ripples it emitted, the assassins were overjoyed. Luckily, it seemed that the Dragon City Master hadn't succeeded. The puppet stared at the palace that was covered with thick lines that constantly contracted and expanded like a giant heart. A dignified expression appeared in its eyes. Before he could make a decision, a figure appeared in front of him. Sunset's expression was resolute. I'm going back on my word. Don't even think about hurting my master. After receiving extra care from the giant spirit clan, the miserable Black Wolf howled. Sunset, you stupid woman! Kill her! Kill her! The puppet raised its broken saber, and the sage's cold voice sounded out, "Thank you for helping me make a decision." Schwa! As the broken saber chopped down, Sunset Shadow was sent flying, blood spurting from her nose and mouth. Every time she used the myriad heavens fishing art, she would fall into a weakened state. Facing the saber, she was indeed powerless to block it. Without any hesitation, the puppet took a step forward and slashed out a second time. A furious roar rang out from the depths of the hall, and a rich blood-red light erupted from within, enveloping the entire hall. Bang! The bloody light suddenly caved in, and a huge gap was forcibly cut open. Some of the patterns on the surface of the great hall shattered and broke apart. "Bastard! If you dare attack again, I'll make sure you die a graveless death." The low and deep roar caused the black wolf's body to suddenly stiffen. Cold sweat gushed out, drenching its blood-stained fur, making it look even more pathetic and laughable. It's him! It's him! Even if another 1,000,000 years passed, the black wolf would never forget this voice. "Hurry! We cannot allow him to succeed." The puppet looked around, but still couldn't find any trace of Councilman Morningstar. The 6 councilmen of the Dark Parliament felt a headache coming on. With one councilman missing, although they could just barely stimulate the puppet to erupt with strength, the losses would rise several times over. The obstruction of the giant spirit clan had already caused them to wear out their eyes. If things continued like this, they feared they wouldn't be able to last much longer. But the current situation was like riding a tiger. Besides bracing themselves and continuing to the end, there was no other choice. The sage said, "Fellow councilmen, do not hold back any longer." Bang! The puppet's aura suddenly rose to another level. The broken saber in its hand seemed to be activated by killing intent and began to hum and tremble. "Kill!" The 6 councilmen roared out in unison. Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, the shrinking and expanding palace came to a sudden stop. Then, massive cracks appeared on its surface. Pieces of stone fell off, revealing a dripping blood. This was a true heart as large as a mountain. Now, a long wound had appeared on its surface. Blood gushed out, soaking the yellow sand below. 2 figures appeared above the heart. On the left was the chaste Dragon City Master, and on the right was a middle-aged man. "I didn't lose to you. I know. So I really can't accept this. But in this world there are no ifs." The middle-aged man slowly nodded. His eyes fell on Black Wolf, and he bitterly smiled. "In the past, how could I have accepted an idiot like you as a subordinate?" He fell backwards, his body turning into a mass of blood-red light that fell into the heart below. The puppet suddenly froze. It realized that it had done something extremely stupid. If looks could kill, Black Wolf would have already been torn to pieces, this useless bastard. Looking at the current situation, how could it not understand that all of them had fallen into a trap? And indeed, Sunset Shadow's expression was calm, as if she had already expected this. Her obstruction just now had been intentional. The outcome had been decided. After obtaining the ancient's heart, the Dragon City Master's strength had skyrocketed. It could be foreseen that none of them would have a good ending. He lifted a hand, and the mountain-like heart rapidly shrank. After it fell into Chinyu's hand, it paused for a moment before slowly beating. As the heart contracted and expanded, the blood that had poured into the yellow sand flew out and was absorbed by the heart once more. Thump! Thump! Deep voices echoed in the air, causing the faces of the robbers to turn even paler. This was the scene that the people of the giant spirit clan who had hurried oversaw. Although Chinyu was covered in black robes, the suppression that came from the level of bloodline couldn't be mistaken. Under the leadership of the old patriarch, all the giant spirit clan members trembled as they fell to their knees. "The giant spirit lineage greets Master and welcomes your return to the world." Chin, you could clearly sense everything happening outside. He wanted to know just what the ancient would do next. Would he slaughter in all directions and use the blood and cries of his enemies to announce his powerful return? He felt that it wouldn't be so simple. If it really was like this, he would have been able to do it after he entered the hell of the underworld secret realm. There was no need to wait until today. As Chinyu was deep in thought, the ancient's voice suddenly sounded out. My existence cannot be exposed yet. What happens next will be handled by you. Chinyu suddenly lifted a hand and pressed it down towards the giant spirit clan. Boundless strength crashed down, as if a towering mountain was crashing down. Puff, puff! The members of the giant spirit clan were so stunned that they even forgot to resist, allowing themselves to be crushed by this force. The stench of blood permeated the air. Not only did they not expect this, but the robbers who were in despair were also stunned by this scene. No one knew what the Dragon City Master was thinking. The giant spirit race had been raised by him in the past, and they were loyal and devoted to him. He actually killed all of them in one move. At the same time, Chinyu discovered that he had regained control of his body. He slowly drew back his hand. Because he didn't know what to say, he fell silent with everyone else. These giant spirit race beings were all injured before they died, and they called him Master, so it was easy to guess their identities. The ancient had personally killed them. In addition to the words he left behind just now, the meaning was clear. He wanted to use the deaths of these giant spirit race beings as proof that he wasn't the Dragon City Master. As for how to do this, Chinyu bitterly smiled. He had already thought about it. Although it wasn't easy to explain, it wasn't too difficult. This ancient was truly worthy of being a formidable existence that had once ruled a world. He didn't lack decisiveness in killing. This method was ruthless and ruthless enough. Chinyu took a deep breath and suppressed his tumbling thoughts. He knew that he didn't have the qualifications to express his opinion on this matter. It was just that these people had entered the yellow springs by his hand. Inside the puppet, the 6 councilmen with weak auras suddenly widened their eyes. This was because at this moment they could feel a familiar aura coming from the Dragon City Master. Councilman Morningstar. How was this possible? In the midst of their shock, the 6 councilmen all let out sighs of relief. No matter what the reason was, since he had become the new Councilman Morningstar, he wouldn't be able to do anything to them. This was the Dark Parliament's most powerful binding power. No one could violate it. Beneath the black robes, Chinyu glanced at the puppet. Then he faced the crowd and lightly said, I am not the Dragon City Master. He lifted a hand and holy light surged in his palm. The boundless and holy light was no less than that of the chief judges. Dorellis's eyes sharpened. She slowly said, It is indeed the strength bestowed by the Tao monarch. She stared at Chinyu. Once again, she discovered that things had gone beyond her expectations. This boy could actually grasp the strength of the Tao monarch. Could it be that the ancient race powerhouse's consciousness had occupied a part of the Tao monarch's great Tao? Now it seemed that this was the most likely possibility. But if so, then resurrection should be simple. There shouldn't be any need to go through so much trouble. No, it can't be like this, so that was your plan. What a good method. I admire you, Dorellis's eyes flashed. She deeply looked at Chinyu and said, I can feel the aura of the Tao monarch from your body. Just who are you, and why do you want to pretend to be the Dragon City Master? Chinyu lifted a hand. I will borrow everyone's hands to help me open this desert world and take away this heart to prevent the ancient race from resurrecting. As for my current world identity, if you are willing, you can call me the Western Tomb Saint Sun. More holy light gushed out from his body like a gentle sun. A massive number of living beings gathered around him, dancing up and down. The Black Wolf roared, Why should we believe you? Chinyu lightly said, Because you are still alive. The Black Wolf was rebuked, but he couldn't help but admit that Chinyu's words were reasonable. If he really was the Dragon City Master, and his strength rose after obtaining the heart, he would have been the first person to kill him. with Dorelis's foreshadowing and Qin Yu's straightforward proof. Everyone was mostly convinced. Now, there was a reasonable explanation for killing the giant spirit cultivator. Of course, it was more accurate to say that this was the strongest reason why everyone believed that Qin Yu wasn't the Dragon City Master. As the Dark Parliament expressed its stance, the remaining doubts disappeared. We believe that you are not the Dragon City Master. If we have offended you before, I ask that you forgive us. Qin Yu nodded. There is no need to mention matters of the past. A great pursuit that had attracted the attention of all the peak influences in the world had ended in a somewhat absurd manner. Neither the chaser nor the hunted had paid a heavy price. Only the giant spirit race had become a sacrifice in this matter. When the chief judgment seat arrived and contacted the Western Tomb Divine Throne with a secret technique to confirm Qin Yu's identity, everyone left. In fact, they didn't care about Qin Yu's identity. As long as he wasn't the resurrected Dragon City Master, everything was fine. Before the Dark Parliament left, the sage borrowed the puppet's mouth to say, "I hope that we can meet again in the future." Qin Yu knew that there was a small matter left behind here. He needed to privately communicate with the Dark Parliament once more. As for Yun Dai, when the time came, she would naturally have a way to fool them so that the Dark Parliament wouldn't dare to act rashly. Dorley smiled. "I still have some time before I leave. If the Saint Sun has time, you might as well return to the Western Tomb." She nodded. Under the envious eyes of the chief judgment seat, she turned and left. Soon, in the entire desert world, there was only Qin Yu left. The ancient's heart was suppressed here, and also the source of strength for the entire Yellow Sand world. Now that it had been taken away, the world was rapidly moving towards destruction. The most obvious point was that the great sun overhead was rapidly dimming, and the temperature in the air was rapidly falling. Perhaps it wouldn't be too long before this place turned into a land of eternal cold. "Whew!" Qin Yu let out a long breath. It was time to leave, but at this time his eyebrows furrowed together. He looked up into the distance. There was a faint aura there that made him feel a sense of familiarity. This was the aura of the giant spirit race. There were actually other giant spirits in this world.